day before yesterday. I still haven't received a letter from the Public Protector, so I wrote back to her to say, you've missed your own deadline. Can you please explain why you've missed your own deadline? Now, this is a matter of concern for me.
So what will happen, or what measures will you now as Action SA take if the Public Protector doesn't investigate the Minister?
Well, Elvis, I can just refer to a couple of instances in Parliament where Parliament have had ad hoc committees to investigate. One of them was around Mr. Floyd Shivambu, who'd also taken money from BBS. He was given a slap on the wrist, and I think he lost 1 month's salary, or even a portion of 1 month's salary. But we know that he had been the recipient, and his brother had been the recipient of a significant amount of money from BBS. So we don't believe that parliamentary processes are going to suffice. We've seen what they've done with the Pala Pala matter, where the President clearly was in breach of foreign exchange controls and hasn't been able to properly explain the source of that money and why he was in possession of foreign currency. So even our meeting we had last Friday with the Justice Committee and the Minister was absolutely not helpful at all. It was a talk shop. The Minister arrived there and protested innocence, didn't provide any evidence, didn't provide any documentation, which is completely not acceptable, especially for somebody in her position. We need a Minister of Justice to be completely beyond reproach. And if I haven't had a response from the Public Protector or the President, because I've also written to the President and the Speaker, in fact, I've written a number of times to the Speaker to ask the Speaker to please provide me with the Minister's declarations, because when you become a public representative, whether you're a councillor, whether you're an MP, whether you're a minister, you have to declare your assets, your loans, all your interests. And when you become a minister, there's even more stringent requirements where there's the Executive Members Ethics Act. Now, I'm unable to ascertain whether the minister disclosed these loans and the coffee shop even that she owned. But the big thing what happened in the questioning session, Elvis, and that's why it is important to have these processes, but we can't really sanction the minister. The minister said she didn't have money to procure the coffee shop and didn't make one repayment for 4 years. But once the investigation into the Polokwane investments into VBS came out, on the day that the investigation report was released, she made the payment, first payment of 283,000. And then over the next 5 months, she made another 2. So she paid back 850,000 rand of a 575,000 rand loan. Now, that is a massive, nearly 47% interest on the capital loan amount.
Mr. Trollop?
The dots aren't joining up.
Yes, Mr. Trollop, that's where we got to leave it, unfortunately. That's Athol Trollop, Action SA's caucus leader in Parliament.
First Take SA, 5 to 6 a.m.
Lobby group AfriForum says it will take legal action against the government as soon as the President, Cyril Ramaphosa, signs the Basic Education Laws Amendment Bill into law today. Despite fierce opposition from the DA, AfriForum and other groups, Ramaphosa is expected to sign the bill today at the Union Buildings in Pretoria. Joining us now is Alana Bailey, AfriForum's head of cultural affairs, to speak about the bill. A very good morning to you and welcome.
Thank you so much, Elvis, and good morning to you and the listeners.
Ms. Bailey, what specific aspects of the BELA Bill does AfriForum object to?
We're specifically objecting to the sections that deal with the final decision-making powers about the language and the placement policies of schools. At the moment, the school governing bodies have the final say about these policies, but if the BELA Bill is signed today like we expect it to be, then the final decision will lie with the provincial heads of education. And we feel that in the past, the Constitutional Court has in several cases already ruled in favor of school governing bodies having such a power and saying that it's part of a very beneficial relationship between the community and the department. And yet, even though we objected from 2017 to date against these sections, they still remain unchanged in the current version that the President will sign today.
So language is paramount. So how does AfriForum then respond to critics who argue that the organization is trying to maintain a privileged position for Afrikaans and English languages?
We actually are in favor of mother language education. And even though we see that the Department of Education has in several cases said that it will expand its offer of mother language education, in the first place, we don't need the BELA Bill to do that. They could have done that at any stage already. And in the second place, we don't really see it happening at ground level. There have been very beneficial experiments with using isiXhosa in the Eastern Cape in schools, and the children have really fared very well. And yet it's taking a long, long time to expand that offer to other languages. We have 12 official languages, and at the moment it's still predominantly Afrikaans and English. And we feel that if the Afrikaans schools are also forced to become duolingual or offer parallel education in English and Afrikaans, eventually the schools become English. The stronger language eventually triumphs, and that would mean that we will have even less mother language education in South Africa. So at the moment it's a fight about Afrikaans, but about other South African languages, which also doesn't have much space in schools at the moment.
And if we look at this, are there any, if we talk about the BELA Bill, are there any international precedents or examples that AfriForum is drawing on in its opposition to the BELA Bill?
Yes, definitely. We have seen in many places in the world, one of the good examples, for example, is Aruba, where in the past Dutch was used as the main language of education, and I think English in the second place. And the literacy rates there was dismal, and as a result, the economy was also very bad, even though it's a popular tourism destination. And when they started introducing the local languages, indigenous languages, into the education system, immediately there was a very dramatic turnaround, and this happens in a lot of countries. And also social cohesion is improved when you have mother language education. Mm-hmm. So in Southeast Asia, there's a huge project to bring back more indigenous languages and phase out the international languages.
I thank you so much for your time and your views. Alana Bailey, AfriForum's Head of Cultural Affairs. Now, unfortunately, there's a media statement from the Gordhan family. It is with profound sadness that the Gordhan family announced the passing of the former minister Pravin Gordhan. Mr. Gordhan passed away peacefully in hospital, surrounded by his family, closest friends and his lifelong comrades in the liberation struggle in the early hours of this morning. Mr. Gordhan, 75 years old, was a committed political activist since his teenage years. He elected to retire from active politics after this year's general elections to spend time with his family. That's all the time we have for you, unfortunately, and there you have it. Mr. Gordhan has passed on. From the team this morning, Tabelo Sibanyoni, Tracy Boomgard, and Marumo Kukana, our senior producer Ronald Piri, our technical producer Zelma Klibi, our executive producer Vutsi Lokoto. I'm Elvis Preston. We'll see you next week. Same time, same place. Ciao for now. Arrivederci.
In our top stories, DA threatens legal action if President Ramaphosa signs BELA Bill, and Putin warns the West against allowing Ukraine to use long-range missiles. Good morning. The DA has vowed to approach the court should President Cyril Ramaphosa sign the Basic Education Laws Amendment or BELA Bill into law today. Despite fierce opposition from several parties in the GNU, including the DA, the President is expected to sign the bill, which he says seeks to strengthen governance within South Africa's education sector. DA leader John Steenhuisen held two meetings on Wednesday with the President in Cape Town, where he raised the DA's concerns over the bill. The Presidency has meanwhile confirmed that as things stand, Ramaphosa will sign the bill as planned at the Union Buildings in Pretoria. But the DA spokesperson Willie Oukamp says if the President goes ahead and sign, he must brace himself for a court battle.
The DA urges the President to send this bill back to the National Assembly for amendments to be made on the bill. But it seems that the President is determined to proceed with signing this bill. Therefore, it is very important that this dispute resolution mechanism must be implemented as soon as possible to handle this difference as well as any future differences that might arise. But should the President sign this into law, the Democratic Alliance will not shy away from applying to the courts for an interdict to prevent this law from coming into effect or to test the constitutionality of this law in the Constitutional Court.
Advocate Tembeka Nqukatobi has lamented the state's failure to bring justice to those who suffered human rights violations during the apartheid era, most of whom were black people. He delivered the keynote address at the annual Steve Biko public lecture at the Nelson Mandela University in Gqeberha, the Eastern Cape, where he recounted Biko's death and decried the lack of accountability even in the democratic era.
It was this theme of forgiveness without accountability, that your organization, AZAPO, took to the Constitutional Court in one of its first decisions. Then the court said we should entrust the democratic state with a space to do things right for the victims of human rights violations. But it hasn't done so. Perhaps AZAPO's skepticism at the beginning was justified. But I have to plead that let that skepticism not turn into cynicism about the project of democratization under the Constitution itself.
Dudu Nkambule, who lost 7 family members at Hive Flats in southern KwaZulu-Natal, says a family lived in fear of an attack. She, however, did not give reasons why they feared being targeted. Armed men shot dead her relatives, 4 adults and 3 children, in their home on Wednesday. Nkambule says she was not at home when a family was attacked.
I don't know where to start, as I'm frustrated and confused about this incident. It will take time to forget about this incident. I got a call yesterday from my neighbors telling me that they had heard gunshots. When my neighbor came here, he found that my family had died, and they died while watching TV.
Transport Minister Barbara Creecy has convened a meeting with the aviation industry for the air traffic and navigation services to present a plan to address the ongoing flight delays at various airports in the country. The delays are attributed to routine maintenance as part of global safety protocols and poor weather conditions in some areas. National spokesperson for the Transport Department, Colin Msibi, says the safety of passengers cannot be compromised.
It is also important to make a determination regarding priority and critical instrument flight procedures that require immediate attention and those that will be dealt with at a later stage. The Minister renewed her commitment to expedite the process of finding a solution in this regard. She once again expressed her apology to the travelling public for the ongoing delays and the inconvenience caused.
And in news just in, the former Minister of Public Enterprises, Pravin Gordhan, has died at the age of 75. Gordhan died in hospital surrounded by family earlier this morning. Further afield, and finally, Russian President Vladimir Putin has issued a stark warning to Western governments not to allow Ukraine to use long-range missiles supported by them against targets inside Russia. Putin says it would change the essence of the conflict and would mean NATO was fighting against Russia. In remarks broadcast on Russian television, he did not specify what Moscow's response would be. The BBC's Steve Rosenberg reports.
President Putin made it clear that if the West lifts restrictions on Ukraine using long-range Western missiles to strike Russian territory, he would treat that as the direct participation of NATO countries in the war in Ukraine. But Vladimir Putin is clearly raising the stakes. Western leaders will now have to decide which is greater, the danger of escalation or the need to allow Kiev to use long-range Western missiles to strike Russia.
Recapping the top story with news just in that the former Minister of Public Enterprises, Pravin Gordhan, has died at the age of 75. Gordhan died in hospital surrounded by family earlier this morning. For SAFM News, I am Anne Musa.
SAFM. guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good morning. We're just getting this in. If you're on your way out of Pretoria towards Emalafeni, the N4 is being closed just as you come through sort of Balmoral territory in towards the old Highveld Steel region. That section of the N4 into Emalafeni. So N4 East is currently closed. Protesters on the road this morning, and there is a considerable backlog already. The other story we're watching is a major truck crash just north of Warden. The entire N3, both directions, is closed. If you like, it's between Warden North and roadside rate. So if you miss those exits, you'll just be entering a long stack of traffic, both directions. 2 trucks and a car involved in that crash. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
A very good morning to you. In your SFM sports headlines, it's rugby. Scrum half Morne van den Berg called up to replace the injured Grant Williams. And in tennis, Rafa Nadal pulls out of the Laver Cup. Details around 6:30.
The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m. The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m.
8 minutes after 6 on this Friday, the 13th of September. This is the Morning Brief on SAFM. Good morning, South Africa. We're broadcasting live from Auckland Park in Johannesburg. We've got a jam-packed show for you over the next 3 hours. Obviously, the big breaking news that's coming in this morning. A statement landing in our inboxes a short while ago from the spokesperson for the Gordhan family, Adrian Lakay, informing us of the death of former Minister of Public Enterprises, Pravin Gordhan. The statement says that he passed on in hospital, peacefully in hospital, surrounded by his family, closest friends, and the lifelong comrades in the liberation struggle, lifelong comrades in the liberation struggle. In the early hours of this morning, Mr. Gordhan was 75 years old, and it's the statement going on to say that he was a committed political activist since his teenage years. You will remember the various portfolios that the now late former Minister Pravin Gordhan served, including his last portfolio, of course, was public enterprises. But before then, he had served as Minister of Finance, and at some point having served as Minister of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs. You can go back as far back as his tenure as the Minister, the Commissioner of SARS, and of course a lifelong activism that he had. So just to get it on the record then, and to have it officially announced and confirmed, I am joined by Nishan Balton, who is the executive at the Ahmed Kathrada Foundation. Mr. Balton, good morning. We've received the news, and our condolences to you and the Ahmed Kathrada Foundation and his friends and comrades. But firstly, just give us the official confirmation then. Mr. Gordhan has passed away.
I can confirm that. He passed away just past 3 this morning, surrounded by his family and some of his closest friends.
I can only imagine how difficult this moment must be for all of you. Just your reflections then on his life, and in particular the last few months.
You know, for many of us, it's hard to envisage a South Africa, post-apartheid South Africa, without the presence of somebody like Pravin in and around it. He's played a fundamental role in dismantling apartheid and an equally important role in building this democracy and the institutions that support this democracy. Always a mantra of service for a higher purpose is what defined all that he did. And we are just happy that we were able to be in his presence for as long as it was from the 80s for many of us. And it's just hard to envisage a democracy where he will not be visible and vocal.
And without seeking to pry and without wanting to violate privacy or his dignity or that of his family, just about his condition in the last few days, we certainly got the sense when the statement was issued that he had been admitted to hospital that perhaps it was more serious than, a routine admission to hospital. And over the last few years, there had been a sense, without, of course, knowing the details, that he was unwell.
Yeah, some of that we would want to share at the press briefing at 12 at the Mandela Foundation. I can say that he had been battling with cancer, and I think it was discovered far too late, and it was too difficult for any treatment to have been effective.
Just your own personal reflections. You're talking about having known him for decades. Just your journey with him, with Pravin Gordhan, Mr. Balton, please.
My journey interacts with him at different points, but his influence on myself and many of us in what is now Gauteng, but formerly Transvaal, were heavily influenced by his civic work and the models for doing civic work. His leadership during the tricameral elections, the anti-tricameral elections campaign, and the emphasis on mass work is what defined him as well as all of us in the United Democratic Front. I was part of CODESA in the first round, and Pravin's stewardship of the negotiations process is what I think enabled us to finally get to the constitution that we now have. There's a whole range of other areas of life that we can talk about.
Yeah.
But fundamental was a life of service with immense integrity.
All right, I've got to thank you for your time and sharing the news with the rest of the nation this morning. Nishant Balton. And just to confirm, Mr. Balton, a media briefing scheduled at the Nelson Mandela Foundation a bit later on, at 12 o'clock?
At 12 o'clock, yes.
All right, thank you. And once again, our condolences and do pass those on, please, to the family. That is Nishant Balton, who is the Executive Director of the Ahmed Kathrada Foundation, confirming the news of the passing on of the former Minister of Public Enterprises, Pravin Gordhan. Of course, there'll be lots of reaction and people reflecting on his legacy throughout the day, and we'll bring you some of those here on the Morning Brief.
Kickstart your journey to success in 2025 with the Durban University of Technology. DUT offers programs in the faculties of Accounting and Informatics, Applied Sciences, Arts and Design, Engineering and the Built Environment, Health Sciences and Management Sciences, open for applications for 2025. Applications close on 30th September 2024, but dates may vary. Visit dut.ac.za for a full list of available programs and entry requirements. Apply now through the Central Applications Office by visiting cao.ac.za.
Are you blowing your paycheck on car insurance every month? Monica, 39 from Three Rivers, pays just 1,515 Rand a month for a 2018 BMW 320i.
None of the insurance companies has come near to the price I'm paying. I am happy at insurance. I'm going nowhere.
SMS out to 30754 now for a quick quote that could save you hundreds every month. That's out to 30754. Outsurance is a licensed insurer and FSP. T's and C's online.
For 18 years, Kaya has been fostering healing through forgiveness and reconciliation.
Are you asking me that? Yes. I grew up without a mom.
So what happened to your family?
What family? You are my family. What happened to you?
Witness as families forgive one another and reunite after a long time. Catch the new season of Kaya on SABC1 every Wednesday at 9 p.m.
The Daily News Diary on SAFM.
And for that, let's turn to N. Musa. And breaking news this morning, the passing on of Pravin Gordhan, and the family is holding a media briefing a bit later on. I imagine that now changes a lot of what you had on your diary.
Good morning, Thulas. Indeed, it does, sad news to hear this morning. And we will be having reaction as well as reflecting on the life of the former minister, Pravin Gordhan, and with the family confirming that he died in hospital surrounded by family earlier this morning. A man who was committed, when it comes to politics, and who actually elected to retire from active politics after this year's general elections, and saying to spend time with his family.
Yeah. What else is on the diary today?
Lots of conversation over the past few days on the BELA Bill, and with the DA vowing to approach the courts should the President sign the BELA Bill into law, and AfriForum also saying that it will take legal actions once President Ramaphosa signs the BELA Bill into law. And today the President will publicly sign the BELA Bill into law, which aims to strengthen governance within the country's education sector during a ceremony at the Union Buildings. We're looking into calls by Action SA for the public protector to probe the Minister of Justice and Constitutional Development, Simelane, on allegations around the now defunct VBS Mutual Bank, and President Ramaphosa has received a report on the Minister's VBS allegations and is busy studying the report. 10 people, including the former mayoral committee for human settlements in Cape Town, Malusi Boy, is expected to appear with alleged gang boss Ralph Stanfield in the local magistrate's court on charges of racketeering, corruption, intimidation and fraud, allegedly involving the City of Cape Town's Human Settlements Directorate, and tenders allegedly amounting to hundreds of millions of rand were granted to 3 companies. The state has proposed bail of between 20 and 200,000 rand for the accused. And just lastly, the traditional healers will march against the marginalization and exclusion of traditional healing practices in the country's healthcare system and the unconstitutional regulations imposed on traditional healers.
Yeah, all right. Thank you for that, Anne Musa. And I wonder how much the passing on of the former minister changes things beyond the newsrooms and the your diary, Anne, but also in terms of what the plans are for other political players across the country today. What was on the agenda? Does it still remain on the agenda?
Yes, we probably will find out,
Yeah, we do expect that something will be communicated one way or another. And Musa has got your news updates every half hour here on The Morning Brief.
Thulasizwe Simelane on The Morning Brief. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m.
All right, let's give you your weather now for today, the Friday, the 13th of September. We start with a fire danger warning. It says extremely high fire danger conditions are expected in places over the eastern parts of the Northern Cape, Northwest Province, Southwestern Limpopo, in places in the Free State and northern parts of the Eastern Cape, as well as in the extreme northern parts of KwaZulu-Natal. The rest of the weather then, Pretoria is partly cloudy with a minimum of 16 and a maximum of 32. The expected UVB sunburn index in Pretoria is extreme. Johannesburg is partly cloudy with a minimum of 16 and a maximum of 29. Vereeniging partly cloudy 15 to 31. Mbombela is fine with a minimum of 13 and a maximum of 30. Polokwane is fine 12 to 31. Mahikeng partly cloudy with a minimum of 17 and a maximum of 34. Vryburg is partly cloudy and windy 11 to 34. Bloemfontein is partly cloudy and windy 7 to 32. Kimberley is partly cloudy and windy with a minimum of 7 and a maximum of 34. Uppington is fine with a minimum of 8 and a maximum of 30. Cape Town is partly cloudy. The wind in Cape Town is light to moderate northerly to northwesterly. It's a minimum of 12 and a maximum of 17, with the expected UVB sunburn index being moderate. George is partly cloudy. The wind in George is moderate to fresh westerly to southwesterly. It's a minimum of 10 and a maximum of 18. Gqeberha is partly cloudy with the wind being moderate to fresh southwesterly with a minimum of 8 and a maximum of 20. East London is fine, becoming cloudy in the evening. The wind in East London is light southwesterly and the minimum temperature there is 16 and the maximum is 23. Durban is partly cloudy. The wind is light and variable. It's a minimum of 19 and a maximum of 28 in Durban. The expected UVB sunburn index is extreme.
Becoming Elizabeth is the fascinating story of the early life of England's most iconic queen. With no clear heir, the death of King Henry VIII sets into motion a dangerous scramble for power. Elizabeth's fascinating and factual journey to secure the crown is filled with scheming, betrayal, and illicit relationships that threaten to bring forth her demise. At a time in which every man or woman of the court is on the wheel of fortune, which may take them to a position of great power one moment, or the executioner's block the next. Channel your inner royalty with Becoming Elizabeth, Saturdays at 9:30 p.m. only on S3. Open up.
Powerball is estimated at a staggering 106 million rand jackpot this Friday. Could luck be knocking on your door? Play Powerball for an estimated 106 million rand today and stand a chance to bag the life-changing jackpot. Buy your tickets now in store on nationallottery.co.za, the mobile app, cell phone banking, or simply dial *120 *7529# for USSD. Panda, Pusha, play. Players must be 18 years old and play responsibly. eTuba is the proud operator of the National Lottery.
So why should I use We Buy Cars if I want to sell my vehicle?
Because We Buy Cars buys cars.
But will I get the right price?
Of course. We Buy Cars buys thousands of vehicles and knows exactly what every vehicle is worth. Their buyers deliver exceptional service and pay you immediately.
And how do I know what they'll pay for my vehicle?
It's easy. Visit webuycars.co.za or use the We Buy Cars app. Follow the simple steps and voila, you'll know your car's value in no time. We Buy Cars. Quick, easy, the best.
This September, S3 brings you thought-provoking nature dockies that will change the way in which you view the world. Prince William embarks on a global mission to ensure our world is left in a better place for future generations, championing action for the natural world and showcasing pioneering local heroes. Prince William, A Planet for Us All, airs Sunday the 15th of September. Channel your inner activist with our selection of premium dockies Sundays at 5 p.m. only on S3. Open up.
Worldview Update, bringing you closer to international or global news.
Peru's controversial former president and strongman Alberto Fujimori has died at the age of, I think I got that wrong. He had led Peru for 10 years, from 1990 to 2000. The former president leaves behind a hotly contested legacy, with many crediting him for stabilizing a country on the verge of economic collapse and wrecked by political violence and insurgency when he took power, but with critics slamming his dictatorial rule over the rest of his tenure. In 2009, he was sentenced to 25 years in prison for human rights abuses committed during his time in office, including authorizing killings carried out by death squads. He was, however, released shortly thereafter, after he was granted a pardon on humanitarian grounds. I will revert to the correct age at which he passed on. I do seem to have mistyped that, but nevertheless, let's welcome our guest on this issue. I'm joined by Dr. Siphamandla Zondi, who is the director of the Institute for Global Dialogue. Good morning, Dr. Zondi. Alberto Fujimori, in my view, I don't know, you will share your view, perhaps epitomizes the story of someone having a mixed legacy. At the start, credited for stabilizing Peru, but by the end, slammed by many as being authoritarian and a dictator. What's your reflection on this figure of Peruvian politics?
Good morning, Simelane, and good morning to the listeners. Just one minor correction. I'm at the University of Johannesburg. Oh yes, Fujimori was a towering figure in a period which produced a number of towering figures who needed to respond to crisis. And he is among a number of about 4 or 5 big men who emerged in Latin America in the 1990s, just on the back of the end of the Cold War and the collapse of the Soviet Union, where countries were looking for a new meaning. And it was also, unfortunately, a time of economic crisis. And he came with a promise to implement neoliberal reforms and fix the economy in a very big way that made him popular. But in the process, he also wanted to fix the society that has been ravaged by conflict and war. But in the process, that fixing process entailed a number of mistakes, such as human rights abuses, murders, kidnapping of people, serious abuse of power. He dissolved, he conducted what is called a self-coup, because he dissolved the Congress, which is the Peruvian parliament, in order to be able to run things as he wished. So he's just one in a long list of strong men who came at the back of a crisis, fixed things to the relief of many, but in the process also overstepped their mark and committed abuses.
And one of the little-known facts is that he was actually born of Japanese parents. And in fact, it is said that he was not known, not much was known about him until just before the election in 1990, where he beat off the Nobel Prize-winning author Mario Vargas Llosa. That is an interesting tie to Japan, is it not?
It is. Peru has a lot of mixed race people who are born of a lot of expatriates who move to Peru, usually to look for mining opportunities and matters of that nature. And then he, as his name appears, is not a Peruvian name.
Absolutely.
It's a clearly Japanese name.
Yeah.
Fujimori Inomoto. That is why when he was forced out of power, the first place he went to was to go to Japan in 2001. Which is a country of his parents.
Yeah, absolutely. So if we reflect then on this figure of the late 20th century into the early 21st century and locate him within the politics of Latin America, South America, what kind of legacy does he leave? And as well as the other, linked to the other leaders of that generation and that that wave of leaders of South America?
Oh yes, of course his legacy would have been to turn things around, especially the economy, which had really performed badly under Garcia. It brought back stability in a country that was very unstable for a long period of time. And in many ways, these neoliberal reforms helped rein the inflation down and arrested the slide in the quality of life of people. And he definitely be remembered for being a business-minded president. But he would be remembered also for all manner of abuses that he committed in the name of fixing the country.
Yeah.
Pretty much like many of the dictators of the time, that would be called benign dictators in many ways, but he started as a benign dictator in the sense that he was bringing hope for people, and people would tolerate his strong hand as a trade-off for hope that he brought. But he then in the process did not tolerate differences, did not tolerate dissent, did not tolerate any form of challenge, and that led him down the path towards terrible dictatorship.
Yeah, I've got to thank you for that. And of course, he was at the center. And as far as international law is concerned, he is part of, the one of the major cases in international law that has to do with diplomatic immunity, presidential immunity, and the likes. That's Siphamandla Zondi. He's a professor of politics and international relations at the University of Johannesburg, bringing us to 29 minutes to 7. Time for us to check in with Ann Musa at the news desk.
Good morning. Thanks to us. In the headlines, former Minister of Public Enterprises Pravin Gordhan has died at the age of 75. Gordhan died in hospital surrounded by family earlier this morning. The DA has vowed to approach the court should President Cyril Ramaphosa sign the Basic Education Laws Amendment or BELA Bill into law today. And the President of Senegal has dissolved Parliament and has called for early elections. I'll have details on these and other stories at 7.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good morning. A couple of major problems. One is protesting just west of Emalafeni. This is near the Highveld Steel Kromdraai exit. Big queues both ways. So if you're moving between Bronkhorstspruit and Emalafeni, just expect a delay in a queue, quite a heavy one as well. You might want to travel a little bit later today. Major crash blocking the N3 at just north of Warden. It's a full closure, nothing getting through. 2 trucks and a car involved in a nasty crash there. Very, very long delays of traffic that is just continuing to sort of grow in terms of the length of queue. So avoid travel for Leas through to Warden at this stage. Otherwise, maybe come off and to hit the alternative R103 route. And Joburg's N3 looking pretty heavy this morning. There's the breakdown inside Galuli's, plus the roadworks you've had forever at Van Buren. So the N3 north coming from Elands interchange, super heavily backed into Galuli's at this hour. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Zai, good morning. We're starting off with rugby, and yesterday I was talking about the juggernaut that is the Springboks now stirring up Argentina, but it seems there are some concerns about player availability.
Hey, to us, it looks like Grant Williams. Yes, he's been the man of the moment. He's injured for the Springboks penultimate rugby championship clash, and he will be replaced by scrum half Morne van den Berg. Now, Williams, who started for the world champions against the All Blacks in Cape Town last week, will miss this test against Los Pumas, and that's all happening at the Estadio Único Madre Suárez in Santiago tomorrow, having been ruled out with an undisclosed arm injury. Now, Van den Berg, who joined the squad in Stellenbosch, that was yesterday afternoon, made his debut against Portugal in Bloemfontein and earned his first start in the green and gold against Australia in Perth last month. But coach Rasmus there looking to give players in his expanded squad a chance, I think, to gain valuable game time against the top teams in the world and build that squad depth for the 2027 Rugby World Cup in Australia. And this will kind of offer Van den Berg a valuable opportunity to measure himself against some top opposition. Soccer news, Stellenbosch FC coach Steve Barker insisting they've tried to prepare as best as they can, and this is when they face a closed book team like AS Vita in the CAF Confederations Cup. Vita are one of the sleeping giants and in African football. They have struggled, though, in the past few seasons to make it to the CAF Champions League group stages. The two sides will lock horns at the Cape Town Stadium tonight, 7 p.m. In the meantime, Manchester United's boss, Erik ten Hag, is looking ahead to their match against Southampton, which is at 1:30. Ten Hag obviously concerned about the rumours that have already been surfacing of hopefully United could have a better year than they did in the previous one.
I know in the process where we are. what we have to do, where we are going. I have said before, we are still in a transition period. We have to integrate a lot of young players also in the team. We are still dealing with injuries. We have to bring the injuries back in the team. Before anyone thinks about excuses, no, we have to win every game. I know that. The team knows this.
And tennis action, the 22-time Grand Slam champion Rafa Nadal will not compete at the Lever Cup next week in Berlin. The Lever Cup pits a European team against a world team. Bjorn Borg and John McEnroe will captain the two six-player squads as they have in the all six previous editions. Nadal pulled out of the US Open in August as he did not feel he could perform at his best. The Lever Cup said a replacement team, that's for Team Europe, will be announced to join other stars, including Carlos Alcaraz and Daniel Medvedev. The competition takes place on the 20th of September. That's a wrap of your sport. On the Morning Brief, we'll bring you more. Top of the hour, I'm Zai Khan.
There's sponsoring a news feature. Then there's helping your clients make the news. Search Standard Bank Business and Commercial Banking to see how far they can take your business.
The Business Update on SAFM.
With that, let's go to Ndawling Lechela. And Ndawling, the big news, of course, coming out this morning, the passing on of the former Minister of Public Enterprises, Pravin Gordhan. He played a role, I think, it's safe to say, in a number of these institutions that are part of the economic infrastructure of the country, right? The public enterprises before that, and finance as well.
That's right, Thulas. Now, former Member of Parliament Pravin Gordhan passing away this morning, as you mentioned, reflecting on some of the roles he held in government, particularly in the economic cluster. His most recent role as a Minister of Public Enterprises from 2018 to this year, which he then retired from. In that role, of course, he was really involved at the time where Eskom was in deep trouble, where we were having bouts and bouts of load shedding. And, he was also involved in trying to get the public sector to be more involved in the most of these SOEs at that time. The minister, or the former minister, also served as Minister of Finance twice, rather.
Yes.
He served in two administrations at that time. In those roles as well. The minister was also part of the SARS at some point in his career.
Yeah, I remember the period when he was the SARS Commissioner, that turnaround of the South African Revenue Services as it was getting underway. He led that particular process at the time. We will, of course, reflect on him and his legacy throughout the day here on SAFM. But to the rest of the news that you're looking at, and Dowling, rates cuts, it would seem that the movement has started. I don't want to call it a wave, but it is becoming clear that the movement downwards is starting.
That's right, Thulas. Now, Europe seems to be leading that global monetary easing cycle. It's cut rates for the second time this year, and the key deposit rate on that front has been lowered by 25 basis points to 3.5%, a move that was expected. And it also comes as inflation in the region continues to ease to the central bank's 2% target as that economy struggles. Now, households and businesses, they are still lagging. As a result, the ECB has lowered its growth forecast for this year, next year, and 2026. Policymakers expect the economy to grow by 0.8% this year, which is slightly lower than previous predictions of 0.9%. Meanwhile, they've kept predictions for inflation largely the same, following a slowdown in consumer prices in August, coming in at a 3-year low of 2.2%. Now, despite the easing inflation, the ECB reiterated that it can't commit to a specific course for borrowing costs. This saw traders slightly reduce their expectations of future interest rate cuts, and this move comes about a week before the Fed meets. Other central banks like the Bank of England, Bank of Japan, and our very own SARB meets next week to announce policy decisions.
Yeah, all eyes on the SARB, certainly for our purposes. Talk to me about local construction sector. It's picking up, is it?
That's right. So what we're seeing there is a pick up in the construction sector in the second quarter, and this is according to the Afrimat Construction Index that measures the level of activity in that sector. The index saw that the index saw that the sector was 8.8% stronger than it was in the first quarter. This as the 7 of 10 indicators that make up the index turned positive during the period. The value of wholesale sales of building materials was a standout performer, increasing by 9.2% from the previous quarter. This is the only indicator that showed a positive change compared to the same time last year, meaning it's the only one that's actually doing better than it was a year ago. On the downside, on a year-on-year basis, the index registered a decline of 1.9%. Independent analyst Roloff Botha, who compiles the index, says the year-on-year figure reflects the current economic environment. Botha adds that the country's restrictive monetary policy continues to take a toll on the economy. As a result, households and businesses are not spending much on renovations and building projects.
And how did we close at the JSE yesterday, but as well as reflecting on Asia and US futures?
Starting in Wall Street, U.S. stocks posted gains overnight as investors balanced new inflation and labor data with their anticipation of a rate cut next week. With that, we saw green screens in the States, with the Nasdaq leading those gains, closing 1% higher. Over in Asia, markets trading mostly higher, tracking international peers. Japanese markets, however, faltering. Now, this was on the back of soft inflation signals and hawkish comments from the Bank of Japan. It was green across the board here at home, with local markets ending yesterday's session higher. The All Share up 1%, fueled by gains in the Resources 10 complex, rising 4%. That positive sentiment boosted by U.S. economic data also filtering through to the local unit. The rand trading stronger at 17.74 to the dollar.
All right, I've got to thank you for that. We'll talk to Ndauleng again just after 7:30 with more updates from your business news and economics as well as the markets.
There's listening to the news, then there's making the news. Grow your business into the next big thing with Standard Bank Business and Commercial Banking. When you choose Standard Bank Business and Commercial Banking, you get access to our trade solutions. Accessing our trade solutions means you get a dedicated trade team. A dedicated trade team means you get market insights and access to suppliers and buyers both locally and internationally. And those suppliers and buyers amount to 20,000 pre-vetted businesses in over 40 countries. You see, there are trade solutions. Then there are trade solutions from us. Search Standard Bank Business and Commercial Banking. Standard Bank is an authorized FSP and registered credit provider. T's and C's apply.
Call Thulasizwe now. 086 000 2032.
Pravin Gordhan was one of South Africa's greatest heroes, not only for being an honest receiver of revenue when all other government departments had fallen to corruption, but also as the finance minister who lost his job for standing firm against the purchase of nuclear power stations by Jacob Zuma from Vladimir Putin. Would you believe it?
Four dynamic design duos reimagine and reinvent 4 apartments in a century-old building nestled in the vibrant suburb of Sea Point, Cape Town. Armed with creativity, determination, and a limited budget, the duos fight against the clock to transform this grand old dame into a contemporary masterpiece, all under the critical eyes of an expert judging panel. The winning duo will claim a grand prize of 300,000 Rand, with an additional 100,000 Rand going to the fan favorite team, as voted by viewers. Channel your inner wow with My Design Rules, Sundays at 7 p.m, only on S3. Open up. S3. The way wait is finally over, and we can safely say that Tropica Island of Treasure is back to serve you some really great entertainment. Tune into S3 from the 28th of September to cheer on the 7 teams who will be vying to win a shared prize of 1 million rand, a brand new car each, and become the champions of Tropica Island of Treasure Season 11. Fancy 50,000 bucks? Predict the champions of Tropica Island of Treasure, and you might be sipping that cold, refreshing Tropica all the way to the bank. Follow at MyTropica and at SABC3 for more information. Channel your inner champion with Tropica Island of Treasure. Starts Saturday the 28th of September at 6:30 p.m. only on S3. Open up.
S3. SAFM values your views. Be an active citizen.
You're listening to the morning brief here on SAFM. I'm Thulasizwe Simelane. It's good to have you with us on this Friday. Of course, the story that's leading at the moment is the breaking news that came in from Adrian Lakay, who speaks on behalf of Pravin Gordhan's family, confirming that the former Minister of Public Enterprises, Pravin Gordhan, has passed away, saying that he passed away peacefully in hospital, surrounded by his family, closest friends, and his lifelong comrades in the liberation struggle in the early hours of this morning. Of course, earlier on we spoke to Nishan Bolton, who is the Executive Director of the Ahmed Kathrada Foundation. Let's get more reflections then. I'm joined by economist, the Director and Chief Economist of the Efficient Group, David Roth. Davi, good morning. Just your reflections. You've been. What we want to tap into is your institutional memory, because you've been around long enough, and you will have seen Pravin Gordhan through the various roles. Firstly, as SARS Commissioner, but also in the ministries that he headed up. Your reflections on his legacy?
Yeah, good morning to you. Remember, I look at it as an economist and the impact that it had on the South African economy, so I guess I look at it slightly different from many other people. First of all, during his time as the heading up SARS, he did an excellent job. And the Department of Finance today is probably the most transparent Department of Finance, and the budget itself is probably the most transparent budget in the world today. And it still remains so, and that is partly because of Pravin Gordhan. An excellent job there. Then he became the Minister of Finance, and I'm afraid things started going wrong when he became the Minister of Finance. You can simply look at things like, for example, the debt to GDP ratio, and there was a massive increase during his time as the Minister of Finance. And I think there are two reasons for that, what happened. Of course, he did an excellent job in pushing back against state capture and all of that. But from a macroeconomic point of view, two things happened. He started bailing out the state-owned enterprises hugely with massive amounts of money, mostly unsuccessfully. And even today we have state-owned enterprises that are simply dead or dying. Eskom is a good example. Transnet is a good example. South African Airways is perhaps the best example of all of those. He tried to revive that many times. It didn't work. And, of course, he gave well above inflation increases to the civil servants, and that we still have that legacy today. So today we've got state debt as a percentage of GDP. That is really something that we all should be concerned about, and I guess it all started under Pravin Gordhan. He also tried to micromanage, and he intervened in the management of the state-owned enterprises and giving huge increases to the workers at the various state-owned enterprises as well. I guess he was a good guy, but I think his policies, macroeconomic policies, was quite often wrong, and the result of that was that it had a huge and a negative impact on the South African economy. But as a Commissioner of SARS, he did a brilliant job.
Yeah. I'd like you to reflect, Davi, on that period that has come to be known as 9/12. And you've done a brilliant job of summarizing a career that spans, so many decades. But if we zoom in on that particular period, what was it about Pravin Gordhan that had the effect of calming markets that were going haywire after the appointment of Des van Rooyen by the then President Jacob Zuma? Is there something to be said about him and perhaps what the market understood of his policy stance that had that effect, that once he was appointed, things could settle down?
I can remember talking to financial leaders. I can remember speaking to other economists, and we all repeated the same refrain all the time. only if Pravin Gordhan remains. He must remain. He must remain. He must get involved and stay involved in one way or the other. That was a crucially important time for South Africa. And Pravin Gordhan basically was seen as in a way, he was the opposition to Jacob Zuma then. And I think the financial markets, he was hugely respected by the financial markets without a doubt. And the financial markets just hoped that he will somehow remain in government and will try to influence the political leadership, especially under Zuma then. And I think he did a great job. I guess behind the scenes what happened is that he spoke to a lot of people trying to put pressure on Zuma then to try to see if he could stabilize the financial markets. I can remember the financial markets basically collapsing, the rand collapsing, when those kinds of announcements were made by Jacob Zuma. Unfortunately, Pravin Gordhan was suspected to be behind the scenes trying to stabilize things as much as he possibly could, and I think he actually did.
At a personal level, did you encounter him much, and what are your reflections?
Yes, a very nice guy. I've met him once or twice, not that many times. And I think he did not always like my analysis because I analyze fiscal accounts quite a lot as well. But I've met him once or twice, and a very pleasant person to speak to. So yes, from a personal level, that once or twice that I've met him, it was really very nice to have spoken to him.
All right, I've got to thank you for those insights there. That is Director and Chief Economist of the Efficient Group, David Roth, reflecting on the life of the late former Minister of Public Enterprises, former Minister of Finance, and former SARS Commissioner Pravin Gordhan. In fact, let's stay on the theme. Let's take a call now from Active Citizen. Active Citizen, good morning. You want to reflect on the life and legacy of the late former minister?
If there's anyone who stood his ground, who stood against the bullies like Jacob Zuma, the Guptas, and Thulasizwe Simelane, if Pravin Gordhan is an epitome of no fear, no favor, may his soul rest in peace. I wish everybody could learn a lesson from him. Thank you.
All right, I've got to thank you for that input. That is Active Citizen there weighing in on the passing on of the late former minister Pravin Gordhan.
SAFM. Guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
I want to avoid this morning if you come out of Germiston, Spruitview, Alberto, and Oakdene, and you take the highways into Elands and then want to move up towards Giluli's, just try and stay off that if you can. It's a monumental backlog. It's the roadworks at Van Buren, which have been there a long time, and then you've got a breakdown inside Giluli's. So you're down to a single lane coming off the N3 North onto the N12 East, if you like, for a turn out to Boksburg, Benoni, and the airport. Very, very substantial backlogs of traffic from that Elands interchange side. Staying south, the N1 North up into the Didcliffe interchange is fairly heavy again this morning as well. Pretoria through to Emeletheni, major delays. The N4 is closed near Kromdraai, the old Highveld Steel exit, if you like. So between Balmoral and Emeletheni, if you want to focus in, that's where the protesting is. Road closed, very heavy backlogs there. Major delays, avoid this one, between Villiers and Warden, just north of Warden. So between Warden and the roadside exit, a major truck crash, nothing getting through. Whole road is blocked. Lengthy backlogs of traffic both north and southbound into that scene. Delay travel, delay arrival into that particular area. Durban, a breakdown in the roadworks heading north before Umhlanga, so some extra delays there. And Cape Town, we've got a crash on the N2 inbound just after Jan Smuts Drive. So between Jan Smuts and Rappenberg, the N2 driving into that scene back as far as the airport. The M3 looking fairly heavy for a Friday as well, from Constantia all the way up and down Wynberg Hill towards Paradise Road. Pretty heavy for this time on a Friday. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
This is Thulasizwe Simelane on the Morning Brief.
All right, let's take some of your voice messages now and see if we can engage with some of them in conversation here on the Morning Brief, following the news that came in this morning about the passing on of the former minister Pravin Gordhan. And that story has really moved to the front and center of the agenda this morning. Let's see if we can take a few of your calls and your messages. All right, let's move to this then. More than 2 weeks since the Unemployment Insurance Fund's service website, U-Filing, went down, the Statutory Income Insurance Scheme now says it has been able to process payments of up to 419 million rand during the downtime. The service's website has been down since a service provider appointed to maintain it was hit with an interim interdict applied for by a competitor. I'm joined now by UIF's Director of Communications and Marketing, Trevor Harting. Trevor, good morning. Thank you for your time. So how did you manage to process all of these claims despite the shutdown? All right, I'm told we have lost Trevor Harting on the line there. We will try and return to that conversation whenever we can. But what we can do at the moment, while we try and redial that number to Trevor Harting, is take a few of your calls. Let's speak to Mpumelelo, who is in Johannesburg. And Mpumelelo, you want to reflect on the life and legacy of the late former Minister Pravin Gordhan. Good morning.
Morning. How are you?
Very well. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Your last caller, who was mentioning the legacy of Pravin Gordhan, yes, we agree. He's done a lot of work for the country. But he also mentions that when he was the Minister of the Public Enterprises, his work wasn't as good as it used to be as the SARS Commissioner. And for me, personally, then it makes me think about the age factor. That why is it that public servants are forced to retire at the age of 60, but our ministers, our politicians are allowed to hold office way over 70? Because then doesn't that speak to someone's cognitive abilities if they are over 70 and they are being managed, they are being given public entities to sort of lead? Do they have the cognitive capacity past the age of 70 to still hold office in the public office? So for me, that's a concern that we are having officials who are over 70 and still holding public office. So I would like for us to reflect on that as a country.
Sure.
That are these laws only applicable to us civilians and not the public officials, and why is that?
Yeah, I hear you, Mpumelelo, but let me bring this aspect without detracting from what you are saying about the age of retirement of political leaders versus everyone else. The period that David Roth was speaking to was during the tenure of Pravin Gordhan as Minister of Finance, and it seemed to me, at least to me, and I don't know if you heard it the same way, that it was more about a policy commitment to bailing out state-owned entities, which according to that economist, David Roth, wasn't really successful. So I hear the point you are making about age, but I would say, are you also considering the factor that sometimes it's a policy commitment that is beyond one person? The government at the time commits and you are the face of it.
Okay, now I hear that, but the age factor is a concern with the abilities of those members. How are we sure that they still have full abilities and capabilities?
It has been raised. Yeah. Many people have raised that issue. Thank you for raising it again this morning. That is Mpumelelo in Johannesburg. Let's speak to Mokoena, who is in Rustenburg. And Mokoena, you also want to weigh in on the life and legacy of the late former Minister Pravin Gordhan. Good morning to you.
Good morning to you, my brother. Condolences to the family of the late former Minister Pravin Jamnandas Gordhan. I think the man, he has served the capitalist quite very well, and we saw that in his last tenure as the Minister of Enterprise, where he tried to sell the SOE, of which you also Thulasizwe almost became a beneficiary to that with Tagazo. So the man has served well to the capitalist, and every time when you see the markets liking a certain individual, then you should know that that particular individual, he is selling out to the masses of South Africa. You could even check with our constitution. Sure. It is loved by the world. And who does it serve? Does it serve the masses, the black African child? No, it doesn't. It only serves the interest of the white and as well as the capitalist. So the man has served well to the capitalist, and I hear people saying that there was a pushback to the state capture, and the question is, if there was a state capture indeed, why people are not arrested? So you can see that those are just things which are fabricated to tarnish other individuals' names. Right. And I always say, even today, people that are saying that such and such was involved in state capture, why are they not arrested if that's the case? Why are they not charged if that's the case?
That's a pretty good question that you asked them.
The man has served and indeed served the capitalist.
Right. I'm out of time. I've got to thank you, though, Mokoena, out in Rustenburg, for your reflections, fair reflections, I would say. And that brings us to 7 a.m. Let's touch base with N. Musa with the latest from the news.
In our top stories, former Minister Pravin Gordhan dies at age 75 and DA threatens legal action if President Ramaphosa signs BELA Bill. Good morning. The Ahmed Kathrada Foundation has confirmed the death of former Minister of Public Enterprises Pravin Gordhan. Gordhan died in the early hours of this morning. He was 75 years old. Executive Director of the Foundation, Nishan Bolton.
It is with great sadness and a profound sense of loss that the Ahmed Kathrada Foundation received the news of the passing of comrade Pravin Gordhan. He indicated that he would like to be remembered as just an activist who grew up in the streets of central Durban and who had the opportunity to contribute as a lifelong activist to build a changing South Africa and to also build the institutions of democracy as one small contribution. We will remember PG for these and much more. His mantra of serving for a higher purpose must become the mantra for all who share these ideals and aspirations.
Bolton says details surrounding the memorial and funeral will be announced at a press briefing this afternoon. He says Gordhan was visited by President Cyril Ramaphosa last night.
His family were at the hospital. His last visit late last night was the president, and he passed away peacefully at, I think, just past 3 this morning. We will be holding a press briefing at 12 at the Nelson Mandela Foundation, where we will share some of that information.
The DA has vowed to approach the court should President Cyril Ramaphosa sign the Basic Education Laws Amendment or BELA Bill into law today. Despite fierce opposition from several parties in the GNU, including the DA, the President is expected to sign the bill, which he says seeks to strengthen governance within South Africa's education sector. DA leader John Steenhuisen held 2 meetings on Wednesday with the President in Cape Town, where he raised the DA's concerns over the bill. The Presidency has meanwhile confirmed that as things stand, Ramaphosa will sign the bill as planned at the Union Buildings in Pretoria. But the DA spokesperson Willie Okam says if the President goes ahead and signs, he must brace himself for a court battle.
The DA urges the President to send this bill back to the National Assembly for amendments to be made on the bill. But it seems that the President is determined to proceed with signing this bill. Therefore, it is very important that this dispute resolution mechanism must be implemented as soon as possible to handle this difference as well as any future differences that might arise. But should the President sign this into law, the Democratic Alliance will not shy away from applying to the courts for an interdict to prevent this law from coming into effect or to test the constitutionality of this law in the Constitutional Court.
The Hawks in Mpumalanga have arrested a 42-year-old suspect in connection with the attempted murder and robbery of a Dutch couple near Badplaas on Tuesday. The couple were allegedly attacked by 3 suspects while driving along the R35 road between Barberton and Badplaas. They were forced to stop after the suspect shot and injured the driver in the hand. Hawks provincial spokesperson Dineo Sekotodi elaborates.
3 suspects pointed the victims with firearm and robbed them of their belongings, 2 cell phones, 3 bank cards, 5,000 rand cash, passports, and international driver's license, and fled the crime scene towards Barberton. On Thursday, the Hawks led an intelligence-driven operation following information regarding the whereabouts of the suspect. The suspect was arrested in possession of the stolen items belonging to the victim. The suspect was arrested, charged, and detained pending his first court appearance on Monday.
Further afield, the director of Ecuador's biggest prison has been killed. Witnesses say gunmen intercepted a car, firing several shots. One other person was injured in the attack. Maria Daniela Icaza was the director of Ecuador's penitentiary prison. It has been the scene of several deadly riots in recent years. In a statement, the country's prison agency says Icaza is the 2nd prison governor to be killed this month in Ecuador. And finally, the president of Senegal has dissolved parliament and called for early elections. Pisaru Diomaye came to office 5 months ago promising to tackle corruption and implement economic changes. In a televised address, he set November the 17th as the date for the polls and blamed the National Assembly for not working with him.
I have concluded that the guarantee of frank collaboration with the parliamentary majority in the sole interests of the Senegalese people was an illusion. The majority had decided to turn its back on the people in order to promote the cult of deadlock and thus hinder the implementation of the project on the basis of which I was elected.
Recapping the top story, the Ahmed Kathrada Foundation has confirmed the death of former Minister of Public Enterprises Pravin Gordhan. Gordhan died in the early hours of this morning. For SAFM News, I am Anne Musa.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Just a reminder, stay off the N3 north in Joburg where possible, and especially if you're coming up for flight connections from the airport and you're taking the N3 via Galulis. If that was your intended route, probably a good idea to change plans. A broken down vehicle in Galulis interchange, only one lane open, so you come off the N3 across all of those lanes, you merge into the left to get into Galulis, and then you funnel into a single lane right inside the interchange. So that's pushed traffic right back to Ilanz and is very heavy. So it will affect through traffic coming up from Germiston, Sprayview, Alberton and Oakdean. N1 north onto the N12 at Dibcliff, pretty heavy as well this morning. The N4, major delays between Bronkhorstspruit and Emerald-Glennie. There's protest action blocking the road near Cromdry. That's the old Highveld Steel area. Big delays just building through there. Diversions to the local R104, I guess it would be. Major delays north of Warden with a truck crash underway, truck crash recovery underway, that is, between roadside rates and the Warden sort of north exit. That's where the scene is. Massive delays both directions. And if you're driving into Cape Town, crash scene before Rapenburg Road. Traffic on the way to Cape Town backing up from the airport area. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
A very good morning to you. In your SFM sports headlines, it's rugby. Racing 92. They begin life without Sia Kolisi as they host Clermont. That's in the French top 14. And Tatiana Smith was named the Momentum Athlete of the Year at the Momentum G Sports Awards last night. Details, 7:30.
The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m. The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m.
Good morning, South Africa. This is the Morning Brief on SAFM. I'm Thulasizwe Simelane. Just one big story dominating this morning, the breaking news story. Confirmation from the family of the late former Minister Pravin Gordhan that he has passed on, and that he passed on in the early hours of this morning, saying that he passed on peacefully in hospital, surrounded by family, closest friends, and his lifelong comrades in the liberation struggle. Let's get some reflections then from one of those comrades of his in the liberation struggle. The Reverend Frank Chikane joins me now for his reflections. Good morning, Reverend, and I would say condolences to you as well on the loss of someone who has been a comrade of yours for many, many years. Just your reflections upon hearing the news of the passing of the former minister.
Yeah, can you allow me to start by expressing my condolences to the family, especially your wife and children, comrades, and the country as a whole. Indeed, I mean, it wasn't a shock this morning because we knew that he was not well in the hospital. I'm still angry about people who have decided they will announce his passing away when he was still alive. But I just want to say that my knowledge of Comrade Pravin from the beginning up to the end was about the struggle for liberation. It was about us building a new government after the apartheid system. It was about us waging a struggle to make sure that those who had other intentions in government than to serve the people do not remain in the control room. of this country. And I think that has been my experience. The first time I met him, it's when I went to Durban, semi-underground, and he received me, and I ended up putting up in his parents' place. They kept me elsewhere for the operation we were supposed to be carrying out during that time. And thereafter, during the United Democratic Front, we worked very closely with him. He was part of the younger leadership within the KwaZulu-Natal area. Obviously, there were older Indian Congress leaders in that place, and those who were underground. And so my life with him starts from the struggle for liberation until today. And I think he has played his role, and that's why we express our condolences to the family. I think he has played his role, he has made his contribution, he has said it in his own words. We couldn't expect him to do anything more at this stage.
Reverend Chikane, what about his character drew you to him and perhaps earned him your respect?
No, I mean, as I'm saying, we met in the trenches of the struggle. We were operating in a risky environment. He was a pharmacist, by the way, and they then, of course, expelled him from that hospital where he was a pharmacist. And he was a very strange pharmacist who was involved in the struggle for liberation. Lovable personality, ready to serve, ready to take a risk. And as you know, he was detained, like all of us were detained during that time, torture attacks. And we went through all this experience. So that's why I'm saying our experience is that of struggle. It's that of being in the trenches. We met in the trenches of the struggle. We fought the apartheid system until it came to an end. And if you want me to put it in a different language, we were like soldiers in the struggle for liberation and comrades in arms.
Yeah. A person's legacy, of course, unfolds over the decades of their lives, and there are many phases, different phases. But let me just zoom in on one particular phase, and I think you alluded to it in passing. That period of the state capture years and the position that he took at the time. How important was that as a contribution to South Africa's trajectory?
It was very critical. Actually, it's a momentous time in our history. I mean, people did not believe that there were other comrades amongst us who had other intentions other than serve the people. And that's why I keep on saying, when people say the ANC is responsible for all this trouble, I say no. It's not the ANC. It's people within the ANC who decided that they were going to turn the ANC into something else that we don't know, that serves their interests rather than the interests of the people. And Pravin Gordhan is one of those who took a stand. You remember he was in Treasury and he took a stand at his own risk. He got victimized for it. But that then elevated the issue to the public consciousness. And that's why many of us then mobilized veterans of the movement, and he was part of the veterans of the movement, to make sure that we save the ANC and the country out of the clutches of corrupt people who were using the state to serve their interests. And I'm happy that we achieved that objective. We still have more work to do. We still have more cleanup to do. We still have more time need more time to clean up the road.
Yeah.
But Pravin Gordhan was one of the key comrades who was inside the African National Congress within government, who resisted this tendency that was foreign within the African National Congress.
All right, I've got to thank you for your time and your reflections here on the morning brief this morning. That is Reverend Frank Chikane there, weighing in on the life and legacy of the late former Minister Pravin Gordhan.
Hey, you know, Ntwana, if I could, I'd fly to Dubai.
Here we go again.
First class, Exeni, Niti Shwe. Get myself a V12 Beast and a mansion with Instagram-worthy views.
You don't even have Instagram.
Imagine seeing the city skyline from my bedroom, watching MasterChef SA while I have my very own MasterChef in my kitchen. Forget the queues at the cinema. I'd have one in my crib, Joe. I'm talking 7.1 surround sound and a 120-inch 8K TV whilst I'm sipping on some grapes. I'm talking luxury, Ntwana. What do you know about that? Let me school you, bro. Tune into Dubai, Buying the Dream. Saturdays at 8:30 p.m. on S3. And channel your inner luxury. Only on S3. Open up.
Another day, another set of challenges. In a world driven by shifting demands, environment, social and governance, what guides your decision-making? We need a new generation of ethical leaders who have their eye on the bigger picture, who are not daunted by change, but inspired by it. Let Wits Business School guide your leadership journey. With our postgraduate programs, you can play a role in Africa's sustainable future. Apply today and make 2025 your year of impact. Visit wbs.ac.za for more.
The varsity derby between Amatax ladies and UWC ladies will display who are the brighter students. UWC target the top spot, while Amatax want to break into the top 3. This is the Hollywood Best Super League. Catch Mzansi Queens of the beautiful game. University of Pretoria Ladies FC versus University of the Western Cape Ladies FC on Sunday, 15 September at 2:30 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4 and SABC 1. Also available at your fingertips on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
Conversations that you connect with and react to. SAFM.
You're listening to the morning brief here on SAFM. It's 17 minutes after 7. I'm Thulasizwe Simelane. We continue to take reflections and reactions to the news of the passing on of the former Minister of Public Enterprises, Pravin Gordhan. Let's talk now to the ANC Head of Policy and Research, Phoebe Potgieter, who joins us now on the line. Ambassador Potgieter, good morning. Just your reflections upon receiving the news of the passing on of former Minister Pravin Gordhan.
The ANC extends its heartfelt condolences firstly to the family of comrade Pravin Gordhan, his comrades, his loved one, colleagues, and others that he worked with over a lifetime that stretch of through many years of service. Comrade PG was a veteran of the freedom of the liberation struggle. He served in a range of different capacities in the mass democratic movement, in the underground. He served in the armed struggle, most notably towards the end of it, Operation BELA. But after 1994, also a very critical role in the definition and defining the post-apartheid South Africa over the last 30 years. He, built up the institution of SARS over a decade, serving as its commissioner. He was part of the constitution drafting process, and then in various capacities as Minister of Finance, local government, also as Minister in his final responsibility as Minister of Public Enterprises. And wherever he served, he did so with diligence, he did so with integrity, he did so with, a certain amount of robustness. Because Comrade PG was someone that was dedicated to building institutions of excellence, but also to finding solutions to problems. So we certainly will miss him as the ANC and as South Africa, because he was a larger-than-life part of not only our liberation struggle, but also the last 30 years of democracy.
Share with us, if you don't mind, your own personal interactions and where your paths converge, and what it is about him that made him someone that in whom you saw a comrade?
Comrade PJ, I met him in the 1980s as part of the UDF and mass democratic movement. But he also, one of the things that in all of subsequent years and during that period, one of the things that I always will fondly remember with him was his robustness. Some people may call it abrasive, but just his ability to engage, to listen, but also to not be scared of addressing and tackling holy cows. When things are wrong, he'd call it out, as he did around state capture, and he would be very consistent in fighting for problems to be addressed and challenges to be resolved. But also, he's always approachable in my experience. And always willing to engage in a very robust way, but at the same time also to listen. Certainly his hard work, even during the final days of the sixth administration as minister, you'd come to the NEC to give reports on one or other matter about the state-owned enterprises. And you could see that he wasn't well, and often asking, Comrade PJ, are you okay? But he would be there, and he would be on duty, and with that sharp intellect, but also that really, really deep commitment to South Africa and commitment to service.
I don't imagine, Ambassador Potgieter, that you always agreed. How did you find him as someone perhaps quote-unquote opponent on some ideas and some concepts? How was he? My sense certainly was that he was someone who did not shy away from standing firm on what he believed, and it didn't matter whether that is popular or not.
Absolutely. That was PG for you, and it's one of his traits that dates back to even way before 1994. There were certain debates about tactics, about strategy, and he would be very robust in those debates, and as you say, stand firm on his views if he believes that it's the right thing, whether it's popular or not. But at the same time, in my experience, also somebody that was prepared to listen, and also somebody that when he argued a point, put it forth. He used evidence. He argues the point in a manner that seeks to win people over and convince, rather than just simply, by populist, by spouting false populism. He always eschewed that and always focus on what is in the interest of the country, what is in the interest of the people, and do it in an extremely robust way. And the ANC certainly has benefited from that robustness that he brought to our movement, as well as to government and the country.
All right, I've got to thank you for your time and your reflections this morning. That is Ambassador Phoebe Potgieter. She is the ANC Head of Policy and Research.
Africa from Within follows the journey of our anchor presenters who travel to various locations in order to delve into the inner workings and untold stories of the unsung heroes. At its core, Africa from Within is all about grassroots storytelling and the showcasing of the conservation contributions of ordinary people to Africa. It aims to engage and entertain viewers, educate and promote conservation, and inspire viewers to value our natural heritage. Don't miss Africa from Within on SABC2 every Friday at 7 p.m.
Kickstart your journey to success in 2025 with the Durban University of Technology. DUT offers programs in the faculties of Accounting and Informatics, Applied Sciences, Arts and Design, Engineering and the Built Environment, Health Sciences and Management Sciences, open for applications for 2025. Applications close on 30th September 2024, but dates may vary. Visit dut.ac.za for a full list of available programs and entry requirements. Apply now through the Central Applications Office by visiting cao.ac.za.
Umkhonto kaShaka is fueled up to make their presence felt. However, 2016 champs Masandawana want to eliminate their neighbors from the continent's inter-club competition. This is the Southern African Derby, the second preliminary round of the Total Energies CAF Champions League. Experience great vibes of African football. Mbabane Swallows FC versus Mamelodi Sundowns FC. This Saturday, 14 September at 7:30 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available everywhere for everyone, always on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
Thulasizwe Simelane on the Morning Brief. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m.
Continuing to reflect on the life and legacy of the late former Minister Pravin Gordhan, let's bring into the conversation now Naren Singh, who is the Deputy Minister of Forestry, Fisheries and the Environment, and also the Chief Whip of the IFP and Treasurer of the IFP, and has known the late Pravin Gordhan for more than 40 years and worked with him in Parliament. Good morning, Mr. Singh, and our condolences to you as well on this loss. Just your reflections upon hearing the news of the passing on of former Minister Pravin Gordhan.
Well, good morning to you and to your listeners. A very sad day for South Africa, because he was one of the freedom fighters who was committed to ensuring that corruption was wiped out of our government systems. And he put his heart and soul into fighting corruption. I've known him, well, you said 40 years, but when I went to university in 1971, he was already there 2 years before me. And I knew him then as an activist in the SRC and always in the forefront of anti-apartheid struggles. And we grew from there. And I remember in 1984 when the Tricam system started, he was very opposed to the Tricam system, 89. And then in 1994, well, we got into Parliament together. But like I say, his passion for fighting corruption was, second to none. And even when he was not a minister, when he was removed as a minister and sat in the Portfolio Committee on Public Enterprises, in fact, I sat next to him in one meeting, and he kept on asking questions. And I said to him, I said, PG, don't ask so many questions because you're not going to get answers. The meeting will finish just now, and this is the tactic of those chairing this meeting, that they want questions so that they don't have time to answer. But he pursued the whole issue of state capture, even when he was not a minister. The pity is that, from when I spoke to him, there were times when he raised these matters in his own caucus and they were not listened to with the kind of intent that they should have been. And I think he felt quite sad that had happened on those occasions. But a great loss to the country, a great loss internationally. I mean, he served in so many portfolios. SARS, public enterprises, and everywhere else. And I think he saw fit at the end of May that he needed to, step down from government. And I think that was a brave thing to do.
I sort of expect that much of the work that ends up being work of Parliament, of committees in Parliament, actually has elements that involve working across the aisle and not being dogmatic and saying that, I belong to this party and can never engage with members of that other party. Would you say that he was adept at that from your experience, certainly from having served in Parliament since 1994?
Well, I think he didn't like the IFP. If I'm honest about it, even before 1994, there was always this clash with the IFP. But over time, I think when we got into Parliament, when Prince Buthelezi got into Parliament, and there was more interaction at a different level, then this feeling of dislike, disappeared, and we started working together as colleagues in the interest of the country and or the portfolio that he served. But certainly, before 1994 and 94 to 96 or so, there was no love lost between PG and the IFP because of his experiences that he used to relate to us.
And while you're on that theme then of working with Parliament, how will you reflect on that? Because I do expect that some of the reflections that will come in the coming hours will include whether or not he saw himself as accountable to Parliament. From your experience, and I don't know if you served in any of the committees where he needed to account.
Yes, I served on the Public Enterprise Portfolio Committee when he was the minister. Well, he had very strong views, and when we were critical, I don't think he liked it very much. But I think we were critical for particular reasons, and perhaps he was trying to defend the indefensible at that time, because after the state capture report was presented, I mean, it revealed exactly what happened. And I remember telling him once, I said, PG, our minister, this is the last time we as the IFP are going to support the continuation of a Ministry of Public Enterprises. We don't think it's necessary. We think these SOE should fall under line function ministries. He accepted that, and I'm glad that has happened at this stage, and now where the president has done away with the Ministry of Public Enterprises.
All right, I've got to thank you for your time and your reflections this morning. That is the Deputy Minister of Forestry, Fisheries and the Environment, Naren Singh, who is also the Chief Whip of the IFP in Parliament. And that brings us to 7:30. Let's check in with N. Musa now with the latest news headlines.
Good morning. Thanks to us. In the headlines, former Public Enterprises and Finance Minister Pravin Gordhan has passed away at the age of 75 after battling cancer. He passed away peacefully in hospital in the early hours of this morning. DA leader John Steenhuisen says it's important to note that partners in the Government of National Unity will have several disagreements, but it won't necessarily mean the end of the GNU. He was speaking at the meeting of the Cape Town Press Club. And the UN spokesperson Stefan Dujarric has called for an end to attacks on ships and grain facilities after a Russian missile hit a grain ship in the Black Sea. I'll have details on these and other stories at 8.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Very busy on Joburg's N3. Anyone coming through from Oakdean, Alberton, coming up from Germiston, Sprayfield on the run to Galulis this morning. It might be the morning to reroute a stationary truck inside the interchange off the N3 north onto the N12 eastbound. One lane open, really big pressure back to Voortrekker Road at Alberton on the N12 and back through Elands towards sort of Rand Airport territory. Just stay off that N3 this morning. The N1 up through Diepkloof is quite heavy on your way down to Uncle Charlie's, coming up past Devlin. A crash on Grayston Drive, driving into Sandton just by Daisy. That's causing delays. Four ways busy with loads of traffic lights out as well. N4 route between Pretoria and Emerlitheli is closed this morning, protesting by Kromdraai, the old Highveld Steel exit. That is forcing traffic to queue and to hit some alternative routes. Durban, a breakdown on the N2 northbound before Gateway has been cleared. Traffic is starting to move. The N2 pretty heavy. Backlogs from the M7 through towards the Westwood Mall territory. And if you're driving into Cape Town this morning, an earlier collision at Rapenburg Road on the N2 inbound is backing traffic through to Robert Sobukwe. The R300 is quite slow, queuing up towards the N1. Backlog there beyond the Van Buren Road exit. And there's some queuing pressure on Baden-Powell this morning, moving slowly, going north in towards the N2 highway. With your traffic update, I'm Rob Byrne.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Zai, good morning once again. So it's Racing 92, not Racing 92. And they're beginning their life without Siya Kolisi, are they?
Yeah, and I think without Siya Kolisi, Racing 92's game might be a little bit lighter. But you know what? Clermont is just lucky that Kolisi is not lining up against this weekend, because that's what Racing 92 will be up against. Now, Kolisi parted ways with Racing 92 after just one season. He's currently on international duty with the Springboks, and he cited the difficulty of balancing club commitments with his test responsibilities as the main reason for his departure. Now, Racing 92 had hoped to keep the iconic flanker, but Kolisi's ongoing international career made it tough to manage. Nevertheless, we have the scrum half, Morne van den Berg. He's been called up to replace the injured Grant Williams for the Springboks' penultimate rugby championship clash, and that's in Argentina. Williams started for the world champions against the All Blacks in Cape Town last week. He'll miss the test against Los Pumas at the Estadio Único Madre Suárez in Santiago. That's Saturday, the 21st of September, having been ruled out with an undisclosed arm injury. Van den Berg joined the squad in Stellenbosch. That was yesterday afternoon. Made his debut against Portugal in Bloemfontein, earning his first start in the green and gold against Australia in Perth last month. Now, Tatiana Smith has been named the Momentum Athlete of the Year at the 19th Momentum G Sport Awards last night. Smith claimed the top honour after a stellar season that saw her win silver in the 100 metres and secure the South African title. Meanwhile, Mamelodi Sundowns ladies coach Jerry Shabalala won the Coach of the Year, and that's for leading his side to 2 CAF Women's Championship League titles, being a 2-time Hollywood Bet Super League Coach of the Year. And the Bulls Daisies, they scooped the Team of the Year award for an unbeaten 2023 season, producing over 15 Springbok players and helping South Africa qualify for the XV World Cup, winning 14 of 15 matches in 2024. Golf now, the home favourite Rory McIlroy produced a late birdie burst to make the ideal start for his bid for a second Irish Open title. McIlroy made his return to DP World Tour action, mixed 6 birdies with 3 bogeys during a 3-under 68. The world number 3 took advantage of the par 5 first and then cancelled out a 3-putt bogey at the par 4 fourth. And finally, some Formula One news. Lando Norris determined to earn his championship title the hard way by taking on Max Verstappen head-on. McLaren has hinted at team orders to support Norris, but the young Brit insists he wants to win it by merit.
A lot of people think it's very simple and very straightforward. It's not. People can believe what they want and come up with their own opinions, but Oscar's also a driver fighting for his own championship, his own career, and that's a very valid reason for him to want to fight and do well, so it depends what the positions are for, what positions we're fighting for. There's many different scenarios, but we've come up with a good plan of how we can approach it all.
We'll bring you more sport on the morning brief. Top of the hour, I'm Zai Khan.
The Business Update on SAFM.
Dowling Lechela with that for us now. And Dowling, numbers coming out from First Rand Group. And these are the first set of numbers under the leadership of the new CEO, Mary Vilakazi.
That's right, Tulas. Now, First Rand reported its smallest profit increase in 4 years as normalized earnings came in 4% higher. This comes as the lender had to account for an ongoing investigation into its UK vehicle finance business. First Rand has put aside 3.3 billion due to the investigation that's looking into questionable vehicle financing practices at its Moto Novo business. And this higher impairment has increased First Rand's overall cost for the annual period. Zooming in on those financials, net interest income increased by 10%, and as mentioned, those earnings up 4%. The group says a strong showing in the second half of its financial year was the driver of growth. Looking ahead, the lender is quite positive about the country's economy. New CEO Mary Vilakazi says the government is already saving money on long-term loans due to increased confidence and a promise to manage finances responsibly after the election. Now, the focus is on boosting economic growth to further improve public finances. In a Business Day article, Vilakazi was quoted saying she was excited taking over at this point, praising the government of national unity and the previous administration's initial economic reforms, which she says have set the stage for bolder action in phase 2 of Operation Vulindlela.
Staying with company news, I see that Sibanye Stillwater plans to make a move to reduce its production of at its U.S. palladium mines. What's that got to do with the prices in the platinum group metals?
It's exactly on the back of those lower prices in PGMs, and also comes as it attempts to return that unit in particular into profitability. The miner says it will restructure its Montana mines, reducing palladium and platinum production by up to 45%. Now, the price of palladium, which is the primary metal mined by Sibanye in the US, has plunged close to a third of its March 2022 peak. Sibanye has already taken a $2.4 billion knock in that unit and says more cost cutting is needed because the current low metal prices make further investment unviable. The current plan will likely result in Sibanye reducing platinum and palladium production from its Stillwater mines by about 200,000 ounces in 2025, down from the 440,000 to 460,000 ounces target they had pegged for this year. The move comes after the miner reported a half-year loss of 7 billion rand from a 7 7.8 billion rand profit in the first half of 2023. Sibanye, like many other PGM miners, have been struggling to survive as lower metal prices remain in the doldrums, resulting in major cost-cutting initiatives, including retrenchments. So far, the miner has cut about 2,500 jobs at its PGM operations.
Yeah, I seem to recall a time when it looked like those PGM prices were on the up and up at the time when we were talking about them being used for catalytic converters in motor vehicles. Lastly, Ndauling, an update please on Asian markets, US futures and the JSE, how it closed and the rand.
So Asian markets retracing some of the gains recorded earlier today, trading mostly mixed. The Japanese Nikkei taking a knock days before the Bank of Japan meets. There seems to be some caution ahead of that big move, with the Nikkei down 0.36%. While markets in Hong Kong make gains, the Hang Seng is up 0.95%. Taking a look at US futures, they're trading pretty flat, slightly in the green. Trade there being driven by the latest consumer and producer prices prints, affirming that inflation in the US is slowing down to the Fed's target. Back at home, the JSE playing catch-up and joining the global rally playing out in the US and Europe. The all-share closed 1% higher in yesterday's session. The rand also jumping on that bandwagon, trading stronger at 17.73 to the dollar.
All right, Ndauling Lechala will give you another update just after 8:30 before the JSE opens for this morning's trade.
This September, S3 brings you thought-provoking nature dockies that will change the way in which you view the world. Prince William embarks on a global mission to ensure our world is left in a better place for future generations, championing action for the natural world and showcasing pioneering local heroes. Prince William, A Planet for Us All, airs Sunday the 15th of September. Channel your inner activist with our selection of premium dockies Sundays at 5 p.m. only on S3. Open up. S3.
Powerball is estimated at a staggering 106 million rand jackpot this Friday. Could luck be knocking on your door? Play Powerball for an estimated 106 million rand today and stand a chance to bag the life-changing jackpot. Buy your tickets now in store on nationallottery.co.za, the mobile app, cell phone banking, or simply dial *120*7529# for USSD. Panda, Pusha, play. Players must be 18 years old to play responsibly. eTuba is the proud operator of the National Lottery.
Catch the Tastemaster Junior this Tuesday evening at 7 on SABC2. It's another elimination week, and the bottom 6 are taken on a culinary trip back to school. For this challenge, they must create their dream lunchbox filled with nutritious yet delicious treats, and their creations are impressive. That's the Tastemaster Junior this Tuesday evening at 7, repeat Wednesdays at 1 and Sundays at 4 p.m. only on SABC2.
Africa Update on SAFM.
Advocate Sipho Mantula joins us now for that Africa Update. Good morning to you, Raz. Let's start with the UN Security Council and this draft resolution that has been adopted. It has to do with Sudan. What is it about?
Good morning to us and Jumbo Africa to the listeners. As you recall that the conflict in Sudan has been on the agenda of the UN Security Council. So what happened yesterday, they've extended the Sudan sanctions regime. That will include targeted sanctions on assets, freezes, travel bans, and arms embargo amongst the two generals. It's until 12 September 2025. So all these sanctions, Tulas, even if you have imposed them, you still have to manage the humanitarian crisis, both in the northern part and the eastern part of Sudan, Darfur, and even some parts that have been troubled since April 2023. So these sanctions, they've been accepted by all members of the UN Security Council against those two generals who have been the cause of contention in Khartoum.
And I don't know if my eyes are deceiving me, Raz. I had certainly missed this story. This is massive, massive news. Massive news. It cannot be exaggerated. The U.S. supporting the creation of 2 permanent United Nations Security Council seats for Africa.
And that is coming from Thomas Greenfield, the famous woman who has been against Africa on the question of the Middle East. Now, what they've done yesterday, they are saying they will definitely support for the UN reform. Remember, the debate around the UN reform is also around the UN Security Council, that you have the P5, but you have the non-permanent members that Africa enjoys. So they are saying they will push for Africa to get the 2 seats. One seat for the African continent. 2 permanent seats actually for the African states. They also look at Latin America and the Caribbean. But you can say these are geopolitics of how America has been playing out since the UN was formed in 1945. And as you are saying, it is shocking for them because we know that Antonio Guterres has been the one pushing that since from last month, that as the UN General Assembly meets, they have to look at the future and the reform of the UN General Assembly or the UN system broadly, more so on the UN Security Council. So we don't know where Washington it is planning, but it seems they are supporting the African candidacy for the permanent seat in the UN.
I think Ronald Lamula and the rest of the team in Pretoria will be very happy with this news. It's part of what South Africa has been campaigning about, but let's see if it actually manifests in the end. In Dakar, in Senegal, I see that the president, Senegalese president, has dissolved the National Assembly. What's that about?
You know, Tulas, as you know, whenever you have to dissolve the parliament, either there's tension within the MPs there, and the issue is around the budget law that has been rejected by some of the members. Now he's pushing and saying, let's go for the legislative elections on November 17 now, and this gives the current sitting president, the new elected president, fire through the constitution to call for an early election if the members refuse to can engage on the budget law. So this also says that he just came into power in April, but you can already see that he's already pushing. And it's not only fire, he's working with Ousmane Sonko, because they've been raising the issues around the contracts from France that they've been enjoying in France. But it seems other members of the parliament, they've been delaying with the new legislation. So he calls for the early elections on the 17th of November.
And lastly, Sipho, in your historical archives, some of us are old enough to remember the acronym TBVC and what it stood for. Something historic happened on this day that relates to that?
That is quite true. 1979, on the 13th, is 45 years when the then apartheid government grants independent status to Venda. And you know, Venda is no longer Venda, now it's part of Limpopo as the province. It was created, as you said, under the Bantu Self-Government Act of 1959. Hence, Venda was given this status. It remained politically and economically still reliant on the then apartheid South Africa. As you said, TBVC, Transkei, Bukitatswana, Venda, Sky. That was what was happening during those years. We will say to us in law, the law was under stress during that time when you have to grant independence. Asante sana to us as you are still leading the conversation, SFM observing the Heritage Month.
Thank you very much. That's Sipho Mantula there with your Africa update. Have yourself a fantastic day, Sipho. You're listening to the Morning Brief on SAFM.
There's no road our buckies haven't traveled on. Roads to new beginnings. Roads to many firsts.
Enjoy your day at school.
Roads to delivering precious cargo.
Breathe, honey. We're almost there.
Even roads to saving the day.
Hey, we're going to have to tow you.
With every road that we've traveled for 45 years, we are what a bucky should be. Bold, capable, and reliable. Introducing the new limited edition D-Max 45, equipped with everything you need for every kind of adventure. Isuzu, with you for the long run.
For 18 years, Kumbulekaya has been fostering healing through forgiveness and reconciliation.
Are you asking me that? Yes. I grew up without a mom.
So what happened to your family?
What family? You are my family. What happened to you?
Witness as families forgive one another and reunite after a long time. Catch the new season of Kumbulekaya on SABC 1 every Wednesday at 9 p.m.
Are you shopping around for the best car insurance deal on the market? 46-year-old Zanele got a great deal on her car insurance when she called Outsurance. She now pays only 1,313 Rand to insure her white 2023 Audi Q2 1.4T FSI S-Line S-Tronic. Get an Outsurance quote and see if you could save. SMS OUT to 30754 now. That's OUT to 30754. Licensed insurer and FSP, T's and C's online.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good news, about 20 minutes ago, the big crash on the N3 down at Gordhan was cleared, so all lanes have been reopened. There will be a backlog of traffic that will take some time to clear through there, but if you're moving between Thulasizwe and Gordhan, it is all lanes open and seem cleared. We're also just keeping an eye on the N1 coming out of Pretoria, crash before the R21. That is pushing traffic back through towards Atterbury Road. You've got some lane closures there as well with that sinkhole, so extra pressure coming out of Pretoria down to Joburg this morning. Crash on Grayston Drive at Daisy going into Sandton. Stay slow from the Mike 1 Highway, and big backlog still on the N3 coming out of Germiston and Alberton areas this morning on the run through to Gilooly's. It's a stationary vehicle inside Gilooly's as you come off the N3 onto the N12, and it's just a single lane to sort of squeeze through there. That's why it's so heavy. If you are airport bound, might be a good idea just to stay away from that and get onto some local alternatives. Durban, a crash on the N2 before Queen Nundy Drive. Heavy queues. You got a combo there of the roadwork disruption, slowing traffic from the M7 Bluff exit to Westwood Mall, and then from Westwood Mall you stay in the queue right through to that crash before you get to Queen Nundy Drive territory. Cape Town today, Komiki Road, coming out of Komiki out past Massey towards Capri Drive. That's quite a heavy queue. And the N2 inbound, an earlier crash at Rappenberg Road, still backlogging traffic inbound from as far back as Langa. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
Thulasizwe Simelane on SAFM.
In case you're just joining us, the news that came through this morning is news of the passing on of the former Minister of Public Enterprises, former Minister of Finance, and former SARS Commissioner Pravin Gordhan in the early hours of this morning, and we have been taking reactions to that. Let's do exactly that and speak to the SARS Commissioner, Edward Kiswetter, who is joining us to share his reflections. Good morning, Commissioner, and just your reflections upon hearing the news of the passing on of Pravin Gordhan.
Thanks, Thulasizwe. And of course, our first thoughts are to his family, Renita, his daughters, and close family, for this unexpected, sad, and inexplicable loss. Then, for all of us as South Africans, it is indeed a huge loss. Pravin, or PG as we knew him, was a fearless fighter for justice. He never counted the personal cost. I had the privilege to work with him from 2004 when he hired me as the founding group executive of one of the large divisions in SARS and ultimately worked as one of his deputies. And it was a privilege to work with someone who demonstrated a sense of clear higher purpose, an unwavering commitment not only to building the institution of SARS and laying the foundation that today stands out as a trusted, admired, and modern tax administration, but understood that the purpose that the administration served was to capacitate the democracy, the hard-fought democracy, and to deliver on the improvement of material conditions of the lives of South Africans. That's what kept him going. And that's what he used to evangelize and inspire those of us who were privileged to be led by him to do the same.
Was he a tough boss?
He was a hard taskmaster. You know, if Pravin asked me to do something, I would spend endless hours, sometimes weeks to prepare. The night before, it was like you were going to write an exam, and you had an all-nighter just to prepare, because you knew. When you saw him at 7 o'clock tomorrow morning, that sharp intellect, that absolutely unwavering mind of him would find some wafer-thin crack in your argument, and he would undo it. And so you always prepared. But that then was good for you, because it also transferred that ethic of excellence in the work that we did.
And of course, much has happened since his tenure at leading SARS. But how much of the work that he started then are you still able to trace, even as you occupy the position now, given everything that transpired between him leaving that position and you coming into that position?
Oh, absolutely, Thulasizwe. You know, one of the things that actually helped me was that the depth and the integrity of the foundation that he had laid was not only at in the Commissioner's office or the senior executives of SARS, and those who were caught in and did the bidding of state capture. But it was into the hearts and minds of 12,500, eventually at the peak over 14,000 people who stood for the same thing. And when he left, many of the people who are still there today will have remembered the lessons he had learned, the example with which he led. And when I walked in, it was, I often think of myself as a sculptor who looks at the rock. The gem is already in the rock. What they have to do is to chip away that which does not belong there, and the rock and the beautiful image or statue emerges. And that is the gem of SARS and the 12,500 people of SARS that I'm privileged to serve today. They were the bedrock on which one such as myself would come back and build, not from scratch, but off a solid foundation that was immovable.
I've got to thank you for your time and your reflections this morning. That is the SARS Commissioner, Edward Kisweta, reflecting on the life of the late former Minister Pravin Gordhan. Let me speak now to Jonathan Ansa, who is co-author of Joining the Dots, the unauthorized biography of Pravin Gordhan. Good morning to you, Jonathan. So just your reflections. I mean, you co-wrote this unauthorized biography, which I imagine involved you immersing yourself in the life of Pravin Gordhan. And I don't know how you're going to sum it up in the minutes that I have. Yes.
Yes. I suppose when we set out to write the book, it occurred to us that although he was a household name, there was very little known about his contribution as an activist, and we went about speaking to the comrades that he was involved with in Natal when he became an activist, and we found this really principled, incredible pioneer who initiated so much of the struggle against apartheid, and he had devoted his life from early on to dismantling apartheid. And I think that's the lesson that I learned is how remarkable he was, and how he had played a role in many of the watershed moments in our country's history. He pioneered this concept of mass mobilization. He worked underground, he worked above ground. And he was this real he always had a kind of a strategic goal, and really was determined. Quite a remarkable life that he lived.
Of course, this was an unauthorized biography, but how much access did you get to him and speaking to him? And what were those interactions like, knowing that it was about capturing his life and legacy?
Yes, yeah. So initially he was quite reluctant to speak to us, just I think because he was a very shy person, and he didn't want the attention on him. And so we made a number of approaches to him, and eventually we did what the Guptas failed to do, and we wore him down, and he agreed to cooperate with us. But we were clear, and he was very clear that what we wrote, he would have no kind of oversight, and he wouldn't be able to tell us what to write and what not to write. But he did give us a number of very lengthy interviews. It was during the lockdown, so we were interviewing him via Zoom, and it would be after a day of hard work. We would have our interview a couple of hours, and then he still had another meeting to go to, and he was in his 70s, early 70s then. So, he just had a formidable stamina, but he answered all our questions. He had a remarkable memory for details, recalling events that happened 50, 60 years ago. And it was quite a privilege to actually be able to interact with him.
Yeah. And lastly, Jonathan, as a biographer, I want your view on the importance of taking a person's legacy over a period of time as opposed to one period. How important do you think that will be, particularly in the context of Pravin Gordhan and the life that he led prior to 1994, but also even in the latter years while he served in government?
I think you've summed that up very well. It's important to look at somebody's legacy overall. And I think sometimes we don't appreciate it when we're in the moment. But overall, his legacy must be judged not in short terms, but the contribution that he made as a whole. And I think history was going to judge him very kindly. He devoted his life to the higher purpose. And I think that's all he saw himself as an activist, just trying to do the best that he could for South Africa and the people.
All right, I've got to thank you for your time and your reflections this morning. That is Jonathan Ansah, who is co-author of Joining the Dots, an unauthorized biography of Pravin Gordhan. And that brings us to 8 a.m. Time for us now to check in with N. Musa with your latest news.
In our top stories, former Minister Pravin Gordhan dies after battling cancer, and Steenhuisen communicates DA's position on the GNU. Good morning. The former Public Enterprises and Finance Minister Pravin Gordhan has died at the age of 75 after battling cancer. Gordhan passed away peacefully in hospital in the early hours of this morning. He was surrounded by his family, close friends and lifelong comrades. The former minister survived by his wife and his daughters. The Gordhan family has asked for some privacy during this difficult time. Sibahle Mota reports.
Gordhan has passed away after a short stay in hospital. The former minister has led 3 government portfolios which include finance, cooperative governance and traditional affairs, as well as public enterprises. The former finance minister was appointed into the portfolio by former President Jacob Zuma in 2009 until 2014. He later made a return to the finance ministry in 2015 to replace Minister Des van Rooyen, who had just served in the portfolio for just 4 days. Gordhan would later be appointed as public enterprises minister in 2018 under President Cyril Ramaphosa.
Executive Director of the Ahmed Kathrada Foundation, Isan Bolton, says details surrounding the memorial and funeral for Gordhan will be announced at a press briefing this afternoon. Bolton says Gordhan was visited by President Cyril Ramaphosa last night.
His family were at the hospital. His last visit late last night was the president, and he passed away peacefully at, I think, just past 3 this morning. We will be holding a press briefing at 12 at the Nelson Mandela Foundation, where we will share some of that information.
DA leader John Steenhuisen says it's important to note that partners in the Government of National Unity will have several disagreements, but it won't necessarily mean the end of the GNU. He was speaking at the meeting of the Cape Town Press Club. The DA has several ministers and deputy ministers serving in the government. Steenhuisen serves as Minister of Agriculture. Referring to the DA's opposition to the Basic Education Laws Amendment Bill, he says not every difference of opinion should be headlined as an end of the GNU.
The DA will not crash the government unless the government is crashing the economy or trashing the Constitution. Not every single dispute within the GNU needs to be met with headlines, GNU on the brink of failing, or GNU, will it last? There will be conflict. There will be differences of policy. So we mustn't catastrophize.
The Department of Basic Education has reassured the public that there will be no disruption to the school's feeding scheme program. This follows the department's cancellation of a 10 billion rand school feeding scheme tender, which would have centralized the distribution of meals to millions of pupils in 19,000 schools across the country. The spokesperson for the Department of Basic Education, Elijah Mhlanga, says more due diligence needs to be done.
No, there's no vacuum. The learners are eating every day. There's a model that we have been using. and the learners continue to benefit through that model that is in place at the moment. So there's no disruption. All the 9.6 million children in the system are continuing to have their meals every day, except that the department had felt that there were inefficiencies in the system which need to be addressed. So at the moment, there's no disruption to feeding. It will continue as has been the case.
The High Court in Polokwane in Limpopo has found Charles Maboko guilty of the murder of 3 men. His victims were a University of Limpopo professor-teacher who had taken a vehicle for service at a dealership in Polokwane and a boulder. The 3 separate incidents happened 2 years ago. The NPA spokesperson, Mashudu Malapizangi, says the sentencing will take place on the 25th of October.
A 34-year-old man from Bakersford, Emmanuel Charles Maboko, has been convicted in the Polokwane High Court on 3 counts of murder for Professor Mohammed Tayob, Lucas Malachi, and for Muope Lubimbi, and for robbery of BMW X6M in Nirvana, Polokwane. He was further convicted for possession of firearm and ammunition.
And finally, the UN spokesperson Stéphane Dujarric has called for an end to attacks on ships and grain facilities. It comes after a Russian missile hit a grain ship in the Black Sea. No crew members were injured. Dujarric says the incident showed civilian vessels and global food security remains at risk.
It's a stark reminder that vessels continue to face threats in the Black Sea. Ensuring the safety and sustainability of agricultural exports passing through the Black Sea remains critical for supporting global food security and keeping global prices under control.
Recapping the top story, former Public Enterprises and Finance Minister Pravin Gordhan has died at the age of 75 after battling cancer. Gordhan passed away peacefully in a hospital in the early hours of this morning. For SAFM News, I am Anne Musa.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Well, still worth avoiding Joburg's N3 North this morning. Heavy queues from 4 Tracker Road in Alberton on the N12 all the way through Germiston, past Cement Factory, through Heldenace, up through Van Buren and into Galulis. The problem there is just one lane open inside Galulis around a stationary vehicle as you come off the N3 and pick up that N12. If you're in a hurry to get to the airport and you're coming in from Oakdean, Soweto, Southgate, Spruitview, Heidelberg, Germiston areas, just avoid the N3. It will seriously have you running very late this morning. Durban, all sorts of backlogs on the N2. You've got the roadwork delays between the M7 and Westwood Mall. Get past that, you stay in traffic up to a crash before Queen Dundee Drive. Get past that, you hit another wall of traffic up to a breakdown before the Gateway exit again. If you're on your way for flight connections to King Shark, maybe just consider an alternative route up through Durban North. Cape Town Marine Drive, fairly heavy this morning. Milnerton down towards Woodbridge Island. And at the N2 inbound, probably the busiest of the highways around Cape Town, queuing up from Langa through to Hospital Bend. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
A very good morning to you. In your SFM sports headlines, it's soccer. South Africa's under-20 squad, they are battling it out. They've got a tournament looming. That's the COSAFA Cup run. And we also bring you the Springboks as they're looking forward to taking on Argentina, but they do suffer another scrum half blow. Details around 8:30.
The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m. The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m.
Good morning, South Africa. We are into the third hour of the Friday edition of the Morning Brief here on SAFM. I'm Thulasizwe Simelane. Of course, we've had to throw the script away, as it were, and basically just change things around quite significantly for this morning because very early this morning we received the news from the family spokesperson, Adrian Lakay, confirming that the former Minister of Public Enterprises, Pravin Gordhan, has passed on in hospital. So we've been taking reflections of various people that interacted with him, that worked with him on his life and legacy, but also taking your reflections on his legacy. And you can do that by sending us a WhatsApp voice note, and the number for that is 061-410-4107. You can also give us a call, of course, on 086 0002032. Let me bring in what the President has said. President Cyril Ramaphosa issuing a statement a short while ago reflecting on the passing on of Pravin Gordhan. He says, quote, "We have lost an outstanding leader whose unassuming persona belied the depth of intellect, integrity, and energy with which he undertook his activism, his duty as a parliamentarian, and his roles as a member of cabinet. Pravin Gordhan's personal sacrifices and his endeavors and achievements in various sectors of our society endowed him with the insights, empathy, and resilience that fueled his service to the nation." And last paragraph, "In the latter years of this service to the nation and as a beacon of our fight against corruption, Pravin Gordhan stood up to derision and threats emanating from some in our nation who were scorched by his insistence that justice be dispensed against those who sought to undermine our democracy and raid our public resources and assets." End quote. And that comes from President Cyril Ramaphosa issuing a statement a bit earlier on. We have a number of reactions and reflections still lined up for you, so do stand by for those coming up shortly. This is the Morning Brief on SAFM.
Becoming Elizabeth is the fascinating story of the early life of England's most iconic queen. With no clear heir, the death of King Henry VIII sets into motion a dangerous scramble for power. Elizabeth's fascinating and factual journey to secure the crown is filled with scheming, betrayal, and illicit relationships that threaten to bring forth her demise. At a time in which every man or woman of the court is on the wheel of fortune, which may take them to a position of great power one moment, or the executioner's block the next. Channel your inner royalty with Becoming Elizabeth, Saturdays at 9:30 p.m, only on S3. Open up.
The students, UJ ladies, want to ensure that they secure 3 points to stay close to the heels of second-placed UWC ladies. However, Copperbelt ladies plan to fasten their belts tight and escape from the bottom half. This is the Hollywood Bet Super League. Catch them Mzansi Queens of the beautiful game, UJ Ladies FC versus Copperbelt Ladies FC on Saturday 14 September at 11 a.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available at your fingertips on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the
game. Across South Africa, online and on radio. SAFM, let's talk.
Listening to the Morning Brief here on SAFM, and we are reflecting on the life of the late former minister Pravin Gordhan, who passed away in the early hours of this morning in hospital. I'm joined now by Ishmael Momoniat. He is Deputy Director General in the National Treasury. Good morning to you, Mr. Momoniat. Just your and we will reflect on your personal journey and interactions with the former minister in a moment, but I think I would want to start with tapping into your institutional knowledge and experience, having worked and walked side by side with the late former minister, particularly in the National Treasury. How much of the footsteps of the former minister can still be traced in how the National Treasury functions and how it works today?
No, absolutely. And I just want to start with a correction, because I don't hold the post of DDG of Treasury, but just say I'm still part of the Treasury. The issue is both the Treasury, I think he has Pravin Gordhan symbolized the fight back against state corruption. Firstly, to expose it. Secondly, to focus on, particularly on the abuse of the procurement system. He set up the office for the procurement office within the Treasury, because as you know, when he was Minister of Finance, as we saw many suspicious transactions beginning to come to our attention, we had to, what he said, connect the dots, and we sat and we tried to connect the dots to stop the nuclear deal, to stop the looting at Eskom and so on. And in fact, the legacy of him getting Tbilisi Jonas to expose the offer by the Guptas to him and the FIC certificate of 72 Gupta transactions was the first formal exposure that this family was not your nice family next door, but a bunch of people who were criminals and part of a massive syndicate looting the state and attacking our democracy. So that legacy certainly lives on. So that both the ethics and the integrity that was Pravin Gordhan remains, I like to think, with the Treasury. But, my journey with Pravin goes back long before. It goes back to the late 1970s. We were both activists against democracy. Some of us were young. We were in the Black Consciousness movement. We were angry. And he was able to inspire us by guiding us that, our anger alone wasn't going to get rid of apartheid, but that we needed to organize at a mass level, to organize our communities, to organize workers, etc. And this led, and he was the brains behind the UDF. The idea of launching the UDF came from Pravin Gordhan and some of his fellow comrades in the National Indian Congress. We were having a anti-South African Indian Council meeting in 1983, and he persuaded us to change the focus and to focus on the establishment of the UDF. And that led to greater things afterwards, and ultimately the fall of apartheid. And then, of course, after as apartheid was dying, we played a sterling role in developing and contributing towards the Constitution, first the interim Constitution and later the Constitution as we have now, initially through CODESA and then through Parliament, where he was an MP. And then, of course, he really, from being an activist, he developed the SARS into a world-class tax collecting agency and customs. And, he focused on what he called the higher purpose. He inspired the staff to do much more than just being ordinary officials. In fact,
Mr. Momoniat, let me come in there. I've heard this theme of a higher purpose over and over, especially this morning. Would you say he was adept at translating that higher purpose and perhaps a policy objective to infusing the technocratic know-how as well as the push technocratically? I mean, you were giving the example of the chief procurement officer, and the significance thereof actually hit me. But I also realized that perhaps that links to a higher purpose, what it is that you are seeking to achieve with an office such as the chief procurement officer, which has become standard in South Africa now.
No, absolutely. I mean, Pravin always saw the broader objective and inspired people to think beyond just what their normal duties were, and and put it in context that what you were doing was for the people of this country, was to develop this country. And he never ever forgot that. That was Pravin Gordhan. He was an eternal activist, and for him, the idea that whatever you do must be linked to what it means for ordinary people in their houses or in their informal settlements, and how does what you do in your work make a difference to their lives? And so he did that at SARS, and that's why I think when when he became Minister of Finance, and we began to see the first signs of what I call all kinds of suspicious things going on and procurement, we couldn't quite see the full picture. And he mobilized the then Deputy Minister Tbilisi Jonas, Lungisa Fuzile, and I was involved with them to try and connect the dots and to try and understand what was happening, where the looting was taking place, how it was in place.
But he was a tough boss, right? Very quickly, he was a tough boss, was he
not? I want to say that after he got then fired, he inspired the betrayal of the promised house that has been stolen, the E17 document, which really showed the systematic corruption taking place, together with Kibisi journalists, I must say.
Yeah. All right. I've got to thank you for your time and sharing your personal reflections on the life and legacy of the late Pravin Gordhan. That is Ishmael Momoniat, who is part of the National Treasury there. Let's bring in Alan Mukoki, who is the CEO of the South African Chamber of Commerce and Industry, for his reflections. Mr. Mukoki, good morning, and thank you for your time this morning. You heard the news of the passing of Pravin Gordhan. What are your immediate reflections? Mr. Mkoki, I'm not sure if we still have you on the line. All right, we'll try and get Alan Mukoki to reflect on the passing on of the former Minister of Public Enterprises, Pravin Gordhan, part of the many conversations that we've been having this morning, reflecting on the life and legacy of Pravin Gordhan. The news coming in just early this morning from the Gordhan family, confirming that he passed away peacefully in the early hours of this morning. And since then, we have been taking those reflections. And I do believe we have Mr. Mkoki now on the line. Mr. Mkoki, good morning. You heard the news this morning of the passing on of former Minister Pravin Gordhan. Please share with us your immediate reflections.
Well, I think the first thing to say is to pass condolences as well to his family, his friends, his loved ones, his associates, his colleagues, and in particular his political home, the African National Congress, and the broad mass democratic movement, as we all recall that he'd been an activist since those UTF days when he first got into public prominence. And I think that over the years, we as businesses, were engaged in the space of policy, intersection, regulations, finance, economic development. So we've had to deal with him in any event, given the roles that he's played from when he became the SARS Commissioner so many years ago. And then, I think that he's 2 periods as finance minister and then DPE minister. I think that in all that particular time, we found him to be accessible. We didn't always agree with government, as you can imagine. Business and government meet to engage and argue precisely because we disagree. We're not going to always share the same direction from a policy point of view, but we found Mr. Gordhan to be very professional, very available, very strong, very robust in his way of debating, but you would persuade him with logic. And in many cases, unlike maybe perhaps other experiences that we'd have with other ministers, lack of availability, he was always available. His office was always very professional. You call him if you give him sufficient notice that there's a meeting taking place or business wants to engage with him. He was always available. He's not always going to agree with your proposals, but, he's always going to engage you in a way that is very strong so that you understand exactly where government stood. Because he didn't represent himself. Of course, he represented his political party, represented the policies of his own organization and government. And so I think that from us, we wished that his soul rest in peace. And hopefully he also came in at a time where South Africa was experiencing some massive difficulties. As you know, whether we like it or we don't, we are struggling with issues of economic development. We're struggling with economic growth. We're struggling with creation of employment, massive levels of unemployment, inequality still amongst us, levels of poverty. So I think that we hope that those who follow him will take up the baton and find success because this country is very important for all of us.
What are your reflections specifically on his policy legacy? Earlier on, I spoke to the economist David Roth, who, in his honest reflections, gave credit where credit was due, but also said that he had difficulties with some of the policies, particularly from the period when Pravin Gordhan was Minister of Finance. But in particular, what David Roth was saying, the bailing out of state-owned entities that didn't seem to achieve its purpose. And I don't want to, plant those ideas in your head. I'd like your own honest reflections of the policy legacy of Pravin Gordhan.
Well, I don't know why people would want to attribute policy positions to him as an individual. He represented a political organization. He represented the African National Congress. I doubt there's a single policy that you can find that you can attribute to him or his individual, innovation or his own solo effort alone. I think that as an organization, we engage with the institutional framework. We engage with the policy framework as it's articulated. The African National Congress will meet, before they have their conference, they first have a policy conference. And we normally get to be invited, and we have a lot of those debates there. So in our experience, we don't recall a time when there was a particular policy that you'd say this is a Pravin Gordhan policy. I don't know where people who say those kinds of things would get them from, but that's been not our experience. Where I think maybe people would say there are differences in the style of the leader. In other words, the person that's in that leadership role, the minister, how they themselves operate. So that would have been the difference.
Right.
I think that we saw that in particular when he was the DPE minister. We didn't see a lot of that when he was Minister of Finance, but at the DPE, we did pick up those areas where we issued statement after statement, and not only about him, but about generally the nature of the ruling party in terms of how it allocated responsibilities and how it handled governance. So
I've got to leave it there. Thank you very much for your time and your reflections this morning. That is Alan Mukoki, who is CEO of the South African Chamber of Commerce and Industry.
We've upgraded. Our new GIS-linked national address database lets us connect with you better than ever before. By visualizing licensed and unlicensed households nationwide, we can ensure timely communication. Our payment reminders are a crucial tool to help you stay compliant and avoid penalties, empowering you to take proactive steps. Efficient electronic communication helps us collect fees seamlessly, bolstering the SABC's mandate in line with Section 27 of the Broadcasting Act. TV licenses. Pay yours. Make a difference.
At Specsavers, we're committed to offering affordable and professional eye care. That's why we're offering 1,500 Rand worth of savings with our winter promotion. Get a free frame up to the value of 1,500 Rand or use the 1,500 Rand on one of our leading lens enhancements. To qualify, simply purchase a comprehensive eye examination and prescription frame and lenses. Book online or call your nearest store today. Specsavers, for affordable eye care and a whole lot more. T's and C's apply.
After cutting the Buccaneers' continental journey short last season, Botswana Giants, Jwaneng Galaxy, want to make beating the black and white outfit a good habit. They meet again, but Sir Rivero's boys plan to take full control at Botswana National Stadium. This is the second preliminary round of the Total Energies CAF Champions League. Experience great vibes of African football. Jwaneng Galaxy FC versus Orlando Pirates FC this Saturday, 14 September at 4 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available everywhere for everyone, always on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Thulasizwe Simelane on SAFM.
All right, let's bring in Khanki Matabane, who is the Chief Executive Officer of the Black Business Council, for his reflections. Good morning to you, Mr. Matabane. So just your reflections, and I'll let you speak as much as you can in the time that I have, as comprehensively as you can.
Good morning, Thulasizwe and the SAFM listeners. Firstly, we would like to say condolences to Mr. Gordhan's family, friends, colleagues, and then comrades all over the world. South Africa, in our view, has lost a patriot, and he played this role. He played this role very well according to what he was supposed to do at that time. The current SARS, as we know it, SARS is very, very respected as we speak. He played a very crucial role in making sure that SARS is where it is. You remember he was a SARS Commissioner at some stage, and he modernized SARS from pre-1994 to post-apartheid. He also played a very, very significant role, as you know, in stopping state capture, both as finance minister and even after being fired and removed from office. We, as the Black Business Council, we had many interactions with him, and he was very robust, very forthright, very frank. He took no prisoners. He was very decisive as well, and he was not in a popularity contest. So he will take decisions, whether those decisions were popular or not popular. And like all of us, he was not perfect. As you know, he was not perfect like all of us. We differed on many other things. For example, we differed on the Director being the CEO of Eskom and the retention of the board that appointed Director. And we say he had a mixed legacy on the SOCs. Some of the SOCs have been successful, some of them have not been successful. But he, as far as we're concerned, he played his role. Yeah. And we're saying, may his soul rest in peace.
All right, I've got to thank you for that contribution. That's Khanki Matabane. He is the CEO of the Black Business Council, reflecting on the life and legacy of the late former minister, Pravin Gordhan. At 8:30, let's check in with N. Musa now with the latest headlines.
Good morning. Thanks to us in the headlines, President Cyril Ramaphosa has extended his condolences to Pravin Gordhan's family, saying the country has lost an outstanding leader. Gordhan, who was the former Minister of Public Enterprises and Finance, passed away in the early hours of this morning, surrounded by his friends and family. A fellow at the Institute for Race Relations, Gabriel Kraus, has supported Agriculture Minister John Steenhuisen's decision to request the resignation of his newly appointed Chief of Staff, Roman Kabanak. And the British Prime Minister's dismissed a warning to Western governments by Russian President Vladimir Putin against allowing Ukraine to use long-range missiles to target Russia. I'll have details on these and other stories at 9.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Heavy traffic into Santon on the Mike 1 this morning, both ways. You've got a crash at Corlett Drive, so going up from Parktown on your way to Santon, the Mike 1 is heavy and really just solidly jammed from the N1 Buccleuch all the way down towards Marlborough Drive. N1 south to the William Mandela off-ramp, that's quite slow. You'll pick up a queue after Rivonia. And the truck that was stuck inside Galuli's interchange is finally being cleared. It's left a really big backlog of traffic coming up from Germiston through Bedford. You're on your way towards the interchange, but the obstruction is now out of the way. Durban, the crash on the N2 north of Queen Anne Drive is being cleared. It's been replaced by a breakdown in the roadworks just before Gateway. So if you're on your way to the airport or trying to get north up towards Belito or beyond, there's quite a backlog moving up through the Commercial Highway towards that. See, Cape Town stays busy into the CBD. The N1 this morning, slow from around about sort of Century City territory all over the elevated freeway. Marine Drive a bit slow as well, just as you come in towards sort of Loxton Road, Woodbridge Island territory. There might be an obstruction there. It was slow pretty much all day yesterday. And just while we're in Cape Town, it's Gun Run weekend, so closures on both Saturday and Sunday morning. Extensive closures around DHL Stadium, Greenpoint, all the way through Sea Point, Camps Bay and Clifton. Closures from early Saturday morning, we're talking 4 or 5 a.m. Should be on both days. All roads reopened by 11 a.m. So it's really just a morning thing both days. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
And Zai, we're looking at football in this hour, and the Amajita are assembling a squad, and it seems Kaizer Chiefs and Sundowns players are dominating.
It does, and it seems like they're bringing more talent than the Soweto Derby. Watch out, because it's the COSAFA Cup action, under 20 COSAFA action, and we've got the likes of young stars, Emil Witboy, Mfundo Vilakazi. This is as Raymond Mdaka takes charge of his first major tournament for the Amajita squad. So they will head to Mozambique on the 22nd of September, kicking off their campaign against Malawi, Comoros and Lesotho in Group C. FC. Coach Mdaka is confident, stating his team has the talent and preparation to reach the final and secure a spot at the 2025 AFCON. All eyes are on the young squad as they aim for under-20 glory. In the meantime, Arsenal boss Mikel Arteta has agreed to a new 3-year deal with the club through to 2027. The 42-year-old has been in charge of the Gunners since 2019 and has led them to successive second-place finishes, but had entered the final 12 months of his deal at the club. Now, this new deal comes on the eve of Arsenal's Premier League clash against fierce rivals Tottenham. That's on Sunday. Now, while Arsenal face a tough North London derby this weekend against Tottenham, with key players like Declan Rice suspended, captain Martin Odegaard sidelined due to injury, Mikel Arteta's squad will be tested, especially with the upcoming matches against Atalanta in the Champions League and Manchester City in the Premier League as well. Meanwhile, Manchester United manager Erik ten Hag is feeling the heat after back-to-back losses. He heads into the clash with Southampton, hoping to avoid a third straight loss. All eyes now will be on Erling Haaland, who could make Premier League history with a third successive hat-trick as Manchester City host Brentford. Now, more soccer news. The French League's Legal Commission has ordered Paris Saint-Germain to pay Kylian Mbappe $61 million in unpaid wages that he claimed he was entitled to. The league confirmed the decision without more details a day after the France superstar rejected a mediation offer by the Commission in his dispute with his former club. Now, PSG does not intend to pay, announced that it will also take further legal action. Rugby, Siya Kolisi has officially parted ways with Racing 92 after just one season of his 3-year contract. Kolisi is currently on international duty with the Springboks, cited the difficulty of balancing club commitments with his test responsibilities as the main reason for his departure. Racing 92 has hoped to keep the iconic flanker, but Kolisi's ongoing international career made it tough to manage. At 33 years old, Kolisi continues to push an intense schedule, and the French club now has to adjust quickly. They'll face Clermont without their influential captain. And finally, athletics news. The Olympic 200-meter champion, Letsile Tebogo, says he feels energized as he seeks to bring the curtain down on his breakthrough season. With victory in the Diamond League finals in Brussels tomorrow, the Botswana sprinter bounced back from the death of his mother in May to claim a stunning gold at the Paris Games ahead of, amongst others, the COVID-hit favorite Noah Lyles. Now, Letsile, of course, he says he's excited that he won and has the African record of 19.46 seconds, a time that took him to 5th on the all-time list. He also became the first African to win the Olympic 200 meters. And that's a wrap of your sport. We'll bring you more around 12:30. That's with John Gericke. For the Morning Brief, I'm Zai Khan.
The Business Update on SAFM.
And let's check in with Ndawling Lichela for that. And Ndawling, save for a brief stint as Minister of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs, Pravin Gordhan pretty much served in the economic cluster. And I think it's only fair that we reflect on some of his legacy, particularly as Finance Minister and Public Enterprises Minister this morning.
Let's start off with his most recent role as Minister of Public Enterprises, a position he held from 2018 until this year. As you mentioned, also Minister of Finance twice, that is, between 2009 and 2014, and again between 2015 and 2017. Gordhan's second term as Finance Minister was a critical period where he and the National Treasury team fought against the Zuma-Gupta alliance's attempts to capture the state, targeting the Treasury and SARS. But his later role as Minister of Public Enterprises was quite challenging as he struggled with underperforming state-owned entities like Eskom, which faced issues like load shedding, mismanagement and corruption. Towards the end of his term there, though, there were some green shoots in form of assistance from the private sector, new management, as well as the Minister of Electricity, Hosienzo Ramohopa, stepping in to assist with that SOE in particular. In that period, we also witnessed witnessed the deterioration of Transnet and Gordhan's efforts to privatize SAA, which fell through earlier this year. Gordhan also served as Minister of Corporate Governance and Traditional Affairs from 2014 to 2015 and held the role of SARS Commissioner. He was in the position for about 10 years between 1999 and 2009. This role, many say, helped shape the leadership traits he would then apply throughout his political career.
Yeah. All right. And there will be lots of reflections, of course, throughout the day here on SAFM. But you and I need to switch focus very rapidly. Let's talk inflation. And you're saying that there are expectations around inflation declining in South Africa.
So some good news coming through from the economic front, and this is according to a survey compiled by the Bureau for Economic Research, which is closely watched by the South African Reserve Bank. And the survey shows that experts in South Africa, including analysts, business leaders and trade unions reps, have revised their predictions for inflation in the third quarter of this year. They now expect consumer prices to be closer to the target set by the central bank. The average forecast for 2024 dropped from 5.3% to 5.1%, while predictions for 2025 fell from 5% to 4.8%, and those for 2026 decreased from 4.9% to 4.8%. These estimates are comfortably in the SARS 3 to 6% target range and edged closer to the 4.5 midpoint. Now, the cooler expectations bode well for the rate cut case, with many analysts pegging a 25 basis point cut come next week. Governor Lesetja Kganyago has been very firm about the central bank's stance on inflation, saying their decisions are data dependent and that the MPC will only adjust its policy rate once inflation is sustainably at 4.5%. And just like many South Africans, I'm crossing my fingers, I'm crossing my toes, hoping we get some sort of relief soon, especially after we got that July inflation print where inflation is to 4.6%, the lowest rate since July 2021.
Yeah, you can say many things about the governor, Lesetja Kganyago, but you can't say you don't know his hardline stance on the issue of inflation, that it is the number one enemy because it reduces the buying power of ordinary South Africans. The JSE opens in about 20 minutes in Dowling. What kind of a trading day are we looking, as well as Asian markets and US futures?
So local markets poised to start the day on an upbeat note, extending yesterday's gains. Risk assets mostly in positive territory, being driven by global factors today, including the CPI and PPI data out from the US this week. Optimism around those prints have boosted the local unit, with the rand trading stronger at 17.73 to the dollar. In the US, markets turning their focus to monetary policy, with traders eyeing a quarter rate cut come next week, Wednesday. Ahead of that meeting, futures are flat, slightly in the green, just above the flat line. Over in Asia, those markets in for a mixed finish today, falling from near 1 month highs recorded yesterday. This comes as investors assess upcoming data and monetary policy moves from the Bank of Japan.
All right, thank you for that. Have a fantastic day. That's Ntawuleng Lechela. She's been watching all things business, economics, as well as the markets for you here on the Morning Brief.
Africa from Within follows the journey of our anchor presenters who travel to various locations in order to delve into the inner workings and untold stories of the unsung heroes. At its core, Africa from Within is all about grassroots storytelling and the showcasing of the conservation contributions of ordinary people to Africa. It aims to engage and entertain viewers, educate and promote conservation, and inspire viewers to value our natural heritage. Don't miss Africa from Within on SABC2 every Friday at 7 p.m.
Powerball is estimated at a staggering 106 million rand jackpot this Friday. Could luck be knocking on your door? Play Powerball for an estimated 106 million rand today and stand a chance to bag the life-changing jackpot. Buy your tickets now in store on nationallottery.co.za, the mobile app, cell phone banking, or simply dial *120 *7529# for USSD. Panda, Pusha, play. Players must be 18 years old and play responsibly. eTuba is the proud operator of the National Lottery. Umkhonto kaShaka is fueled up to make their presence felt. However, 2016 champs Masandawana want to eliminate their neighbors from the continent's inter-club competition. This is the Southern African Derby, the second preliminary round of the Total Energies CAF Champions League. Experience great vibes of African football. Mbabane Swallows FC versus Mamelodi Sundowns FC. This Saturday, 14 September at 7:30 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available everywhere for everyone, always on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
This is Thulasizwe Simelane on the Morning Brief.
Let's bring in now Johan van Lochrenberg, who is a former group executive for enforcement at the South African Revenue Services. He is also the author of 4 books, including Rogue, the inside story of SARS's elite crime-busting unit. He joins me now on the line to reflect on the life and times of the late former minister and former SARS Commissioner, Pravin Gordhan. Thank you for your time, Mr. van Lochrenberg. A few days ago, you penned an article that was published on News 24, and therein you make allusion to a superhero that you say you met at the age of 29. That is a pretty big compliment to pay someone. What inspired that reflection that framed the late former minister in those terms?
Good morning, sir, and your listeners. Thank you for the opportunity. I was aware that he was seriously ill. I knew that he was fighting the last battle of his life. And, I reflected on, what came to mind. How would I remember him? He made a profound impact on me as a person. From an early age, when I was in my 20s, and for a decade thereafter when I worked with him, and thereafter in our common battles around the propaganda war that was ongoing for another decade. And what came to mind was really, as a child when I read these comics of superheroes, some superheroes didn't have superpowers, they were ordinary people. And it was an analogy that just sprang to mind as I wrote that piece.
Yeah. And you move from that point talking about ordinary people doing the best that they can to make a difference to the time now when you are now serving in SARS under the leadership of Pravin Gordhan. How important was the focus? And we will get to the story around the investigating unit in SARS in a moment and how that was then corrupted and bastardized. But just objectively on its own, how important was the work that he led and inspired around the illicit economy? How much does the illicit economy matter as an undertaking for SARS and the importance of you having tackled it at the time?
Well, it was the first time that I was tasked to work with other people to develop a strategy for the Revenue Service on how we're going to tackle the illicit economy, and at the same time help other law enforcement agencies, came from an instruction from him. He called us into the boardroom. His words were, "This country is at war with crime. We need to see what we can do from a Revenue Service perspective, start working on the plan." And in fact, it took him a few years for us to finalize that plan and get it going.
And did you expect the kind of pushback that then came through? If we are saying this was important work that needed to be undertaken because the economy was losing billions and billions of rand due to the illicit economy, you would have thought naturally that you would have widespread support for it, but that wasn't to be. Were you surprised by how that quickly turned and there were new narratives that developed around the so-called rogue unit?
I would not say it happened quickly. I mean, we did expect pushback, of course, and there was pushback, even in those early mid-2000s. But we held fast. We did what we needed to do, and we we beat the bad guys. We actually, I think, had a good reputation for doing that for quite a number of years. I think where the big problems came was when interests began to converge. So you had political interests, you had organized crime interests, and you had other nefarious groupings. Even people within government departments who were up to no good, and they all began to see us as the enforcement component of the revenue service as a massive threat. And so they collectively came for us. It was at first something very small, a dubious spy that, had a particular motive. But very quickly others jumped onto that bandwagon.
All right, I've got to leave it there. Thank you so much for sharing your reflections this morning. That is Johan van Lochrenberg, who is a former group executive for enforcement at SARS. And of course, he is also the author of 4 books, and those include Rogue, the inside story of SARS's elite crime-busting unit. And we'll be taking some of your reflections and your thoughts in the remaining time on the show in just a moment.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Update on the Mike 1, which has been busy this morning for motorists going into Sandton. We've got a crash on the northbound side by Corlett Drive, so very slow getting up from sort of Parktown, Killarney area. And then if you're southbound, it's just jam-packed today between Buccleuch and the Marlborough Drive exit. The N3 running from Germiston through to Bedfordview remains pretty slow. You've got that long-term closure to deal with, the left lane closure at Van Buren, and the big backlog that formed up during that stationary truck obstruction in Galilees. That truck is out of the way, but the N3 north on that run through Bedfordview stays heavy pressure as well on the N1 south towards the Winnie Mandela off-ramp. And if you're driving into Pretoria, just expect a queue on the N4 this morning, approaching the N1 highway coming through from Watermeyer Street on your way to Hatfield, it's all backed up. Durban easing up quite nicely. The big crash up in the Free State on the N3, that's all being cleared. Just watch for some heavy traffic, I would think, through Van Riener's Pass. The single lane sections on the pass, and all of that traffic, particularly on the Durban bound carriageway, the backed Warden's all going to hit that at the same time, and then also hit the roadworks between Pietermaritzburg and Durban pretty much at the same time as well. It's going to be a busy one with high truck volumes and Friday volumes in the mix as well. Cape Town easing up pretty nicely for a Friday. You will queue on the N1 though, going inbound, still pretty slow from the Kubo interchange through to the elevated freeway. And don't forget, it's the very popular gun run this weekend. Events planned for both Saturday and Sunday. Multiple events on Saturday, the half marathon on Sunday, closures around Greenpoint, the Stadium, Sea Point, Camps Bay and Clifton both days until about sort of 11 a.m. on both mornings. After that, certainly by the time you get to lunchtime, all roads will be open. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
Call Thulasizwe now, 086 000 2032.
All right, let's take some of your reflections. Because I do want to take as many as possible, I will limit my contributions and just let you speak. And do try and keep it short and sharp and to the point. Let's start with Crispin in Durban. And Crispin, you want to reflect on the memories of Pravin Gordhan. Good morning to you.
Good morning. I'm remembering 1979 or so when, in a meeting with the then Durban City Council, and he was on the Durban Housing Action Committee, the Deputy City Treasurer, Will Stone, refused to give some information, and he said, I would like to remind Mr. Stone, you are my servant. You're a civil servant. And Stone was furious and walked out. But it was that point about an official is a servant of the people, and he truly believed that. And he's prepared to articulate it. And in that context of apartheid at the time, it was very hard for white people to hear it, being told that so directly. And I think he really always continued to believe that. Secondly, in 1985, at a terrible time in the Inanda and Phoenix area, I was in a meeting with him, with community leaders in Phoenix and a young African person working with me, Fanuzungu, about those conflicts. And there was this eruption of like this anger, memories of 1949 and all of this racialized stuff. And he laid into it in the most kind of tough-minded way and said, look, you need a political analysis of what happened in 1949. He would not tolerate that kind of
Right.
the racism that was circulating there.
All right.
A great character. Thanks.
I've got to thank you for those reflections. That's Crispin in Durban. Let's take Stay in Guamashu. Stay, good morning. You also want to share your reflections.
Welcome to SAFM, my brother.
Thank you.
Condolences to the Gordhan family. However, I need to do a U-turn quickly, because to us as the lower class, I don't know, we have a very strange feeling, because he represented power, money, and the middle class. He represented power which has been prescribing for the lower class, especially the natives. Here in Durban, well, I'm sorry that I'm going to say this. If you come to Durban, you will see that the town is represented by the business from the Indians. We as natives, we represent a group of people who are workers and customers, and we are forced to be in that. I don't know. Radio is very different from me from today, since I hear this news, because we're going to hear a lot of noise about him and people who really, really have lost touch with what is happening at the lower class.
Yeah.
We are suffering. And this guy is being praised, but we as people here at the lower class, I don't know. We are being told about the good areas done, but we don't see it, we don't feel it.
Yeah.
But we understand he was not a native.
All right. Stay, I've got to thank you for that. And that's the point of having you coming on and putting that perspective as well from your own experience of the legacy of the late former Minister Pravin Gordhan. Let me go to Khashif, who is in Cape Town. Khashif, good morning. You want to reflect on the life of the former minister?
Good morning. Thank you so much. Look, I also want to speak as the president of the Progressive Professionals Forum, and we most Minister PG on more than one occasion. And I want to remind South Africans that what we have, and we first of all thank Minister PG's or former Minister PG's family for allowing and sharing his entire life with us, the South Africans, for delivering our freedom and post-democracy, for doing what we did. And that was a sacrifice to them, which we are the beneficiaries of. So let me first of all, our condolences to his family, and great thanks from the heart for giving up their father, grandfather, uncle to the rest of South Africa. We mustn't forget that Comrade PG was also a professional, and he was a pharmacist, as everybody now knows, and he sacrificed his own career during the anti-apartheid struggle in order to deliver freedom to us. He was a liberator, and I must also say, Thulasizwe, that when we hosted him, you know, he was very direct. We host PPF, host various ministers and senior government officials, and they normally come there and, you know, they ask us what we can do and so on, but he was very direct. And he told us that as professionals, I expect you to keep us accountable. As professionals, I expect you to contribute towards the growth of this economy. And as professionals, I expect you to tell me and any one of my colleagues where I've done wrong. So in as direct as he was in the public, so he was with us. And the way he spoke, Thulasizwe, it was an instruction. It wasn't a request. And this is how we got to know Comrade PG, both in the public domain and in the private domain. And of course, during the former President Zuma era, he was the lone voice that stood. And if one understands the DNA of a freedom fighter, such as Comrade PG, was willing to take up an entire apartheid regime, that same DNA, that same principle, that same value, that same fearlessness which guided him then, guided him now, when he spoke out and spoke about and took unpopular or seemingly unpopular decisions because it was a principle which he believed in, principles which he was willing to die for, and principles for which he was willing to be unpopular. And for that, we must celebrate him. All right,
Khashif, let's leave it there. That's Khashif in Cape Town. Let's speak to Papillon. Papillon, I don't know if you have you on the line, your quick reflections as well. All right, we do not have Papillon on the line. Let's listen to some of your voice notes now.
Good morning, Thulasizwe. Yes, indeed it is a sad day for the country, losing such a dignified figure such as Mr. Gordhan. Condolences to the Gordhan family. You know, I would like to remind SFM listeners that it's irrelevant at this point to bring up topics such as him working for white capitalists or allegations of state capture. All of that is irrelevant at this point. We must remember that at the time when Mr. Gordhan was appointed as finance minister back in 2009, he served all the way till 2017, and the rand never traded above 15 rand. The economy was stable, inflation was at its lowest. We were not even grey listed, as a nation. Economically, we were doing well by that time. We must not bring up irrelevant topics at a time of grief. We must respect and honor the legacy of Mr. Gordhan. Thank you. Daniel here in Bryanston.
All right, I've got to thank you for those reflections, and I'm sure they will continue throughout the day here on SAFM. We've had a jam-packed 3 hours, of course, dominated by that one story. It's amazing how we had one story that we were looking at and thought it was going to dominate, the imminent signing into law of the BELA Bill, the Basic Education Laws Amendment Bill, and the President is set to sign that in the next 2.5 hours or so, but that was quickly overtaken naturally, as it happens with breaking news, by the news coming in this morning of the passing on of Pravin Gordhan. And we've had multiple conversations. We spoke to Nishan Balton from the Ahmed Kathrada Foundation, spoke to Reverend Frank Chikane. We had the reflections of David Roth, the economist, as far as the economic legacy and policy legacy of Pravin Gordhan is concerned. Then the reflections of business leaders that also interacted with him as well. So we've had a jam-packed show, and thank you for taking part and for your sharing your own reflections throughout the morning. And that's how we come to the end of the Friday, the 13th edition of the Morning Brief here on SAFM. Thank you for listening. Essential cover from Outsurance pays out claims in cash, allowing you to choose your own panel beater. SMS CAR to 43187 now.
In our top stories, President Ramaphosa mourns passing of Pravin Gordhan and reaction to Steenhuisen's decision of his chief of staff. Good morning. President Cyril Ramaphosa has extended his condolences to Pravin Gordhan's family, saying the country has lost an outstanding leader. Gordhan, the former Minister of Public Enterprises and Finance, passed away in the early hours of this morning, surrounded by his friends and family. Ramaphosa offered his deep condolences to Gordhan's wife, Vanita Raju, and his two daughters, as well as his siblings. Presidency spokesperson Vincent